Hello and welcome to the 2022 Boys of Summer Draft Reaction Podcast. I'm welcoming a few special guests today. First off, we have the co-commissioner, Eric Follman. Eric, how you doing today?
Oh, good, man. I'm ready to roll, ready to get rocking.
Second, we have our defending rotisserie champion and biggest playoff choker from last year, Christopher Zajac. Chris, how you doing today?
Doing good. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is indeed. And then we also have the bottom of the barrel. We scraped the bottom to bring in Tyler Penny on his way to Marengo, Illinois. Just kidding. Union. Tyler, what's popping? Oh, Tyler's
And he's on mute.
Oh, and he's muted.
He's listening in the car.
Bluetooth. Listening only. All right.
We're a legit radio show.
Yeah, typical radio. All right, we're gonna jump right in. We'll skip the small talk and we're gonna jump in right into the draft. Now, with the draft, I don't know if there were any surprises, any surprise values. I mean, we're gonna talk about our reaches, our values, our overpays, but overall in general, how'd you think the draft went? How'd draft night go for you, Eric?
I think early in the draft, I was interested because I think people were going lower than I thought. Obviously there was some reach. I think there were some guys that were a little overpays, but Mullins, I thought went cheaper than I thought. Even Castillo being nominated second, I thought for how much pitching people needed, I thought went at a pretty good price. So it was I thought there was a lot of lower price players that probably after a lot of those players were gone, people were like, dang, I wish I did spend $7 more on that guy rather than the situation we had where a lot of teams had money with not a lot to spend on.
Yeah, I mean, one of my bold predictions is that the most expensive player is going to be drafted. I thought that people would just push up Mullins to 45, 50. I mean, we had Tatis and DeGrom, and to have a no guy go for more than $39, I thought that was pretty surprising. I thought that everybody had money to spend, and I think several people left some money on the table. We saw some guys drafted late that went for way more than they should have just because people had so much money that they didn't even know what to do with. And yeah, it just kind of makes you wonder why the guys didn't just push up the guys that you know you're going to get fantasy production out of, like Tyler O'Neill and Cedric Mullins and Castillo and Rodon and some of those guys. I thought that the pitching went about as I planned it. I knew that you'd have to overpay to get quality pitching. We saw that with Phil. He kind of got a lot of pitchers in like the $20 to $35 range, which was good. I think he was kind of expecting to more have to pay 30, 35, 40 for them, which is still more than a guy like Logan Webb. I don't think Logan Webb's necessarily worth like $34 if it was just a strict redraft of everything. But for him being one of the best guys available, it's kind of the premium you had to pay this year. So I think the pitchers went for more than they probably should have. But this year, with all things considered, I think that it kind of went probably about according to plan, maybe even like a little lower than we expected them to go. What did you think overall reactions in the draft, Chris?
I'm going to echo what Eric said. I wish I would have spent a little bit more for a couple better players, but all in all, I kind of had my own little draft strategy, and I think I executed it to a perfect tee. Yeah, it's always a crapshoot when it comes to, like, especially in like this second year of the dynasty where you have money to spend, but what is exactly a reach or what is exactly an overpay when you have that money to spend? Mm-hmm. If that's the guy that you're targeting, you're going to want to go get him.
Yeah, that's kind of my always thing is just get the guys that you want. In an auction, you're not restricted to draft position. You're not kind of handcuffed by that. Just if there's a guy that you want, just go and get him. And then you'll just be, even if you have to overpay for him, don't settle for guys that you don't want at better prices over the guys that you actually do want. Eric, how did your personal draft strategy pan out? Did you get the players that you wanted?
I would say based on like what my team needs were, what I felt like I could improve on, I think I executed what I needed to. I think I was a little shy, and we'll get into my team in a bit, but I think I was a little shy in stolen bases, so I paid a little bit for that. I wanted to make sure on base percentage is not going to be an issue, so I think DJ LeMahieu will bounce back. Soler gives me the home runs. I think I got a really good price for Clevenger as well, so that evened out my rotation. I wanted to have pitching depth because pitching depth is so hard to find in this league, especially with waivers and any type of pitcher that does well at all being picked up pretty fast. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be scrambling for pitching with injuries, and I wanted to kind of sure that up as well. So it went about as according to plan for me, but just like Chris said earlier, I do wish there was a couple guys that I spent $4 or $5 more on, and I would have rather had those guys than a couple of the guys I panned out with.
All right, let's jump into who we thought the biggest. Let's do overpays first. When we look at the players who were overpaid for, Eric, what jumps out to you at the start? It's gonna be the first one's pretty obvious.
Yeah, let's talk about that one.
We can get that one out of the way right away.
Yeah, we're trying to rationalize that pre-show, but yeah, the Cabrian Hayes one's obviously just insane. I'm sure Dave was just scratching his head thinking we gave him so much shit last year for bidding what he bid on Cabrian Hayes, and then he's probably sitting there like, what world am I living in where now Cabrian Hayes goes for as much as he did? Obviously, he was kind of pigeonholed into that aspect, and we'll kind of talk about that as it goes on. But Bryce did it again, probably as an effect of pigeonholing himself, and pays 28 on Grisham. I think those are by far and away the two biggest overpays of the draft, and it's by the same guy. Come on, Bryce.
Yeah, I think that might be number one and number two, which is Cabrian Hayes at 37, Trent Grisham at 28. Now, I'll kind of explain what kind of happened. Now, Bryce he did not do well in this draft. Obviously, he paid 37 for Cabrian Hayes and 28 for Trent Grisham. Guys that should not be going for. They should be going for 20 less than that, 30 less than that. I don't think Cabrian Hayes is more than a $10 player. I don't think Grisham's more than a $10 player. Eric, you had it for 14 last year. You could have kept him at, and it wouldn't have been smart for you to do it. But here's what happened with Bryce: is Bryce made probably the worst pick in the draft, which was right here, Garrett Whitlock at $1. Now, okay, Garrett Whitlock at $1, you want to take a swing on your guy. You understand it. And I understand the pick for some people. If Garrett Whitlock is your guy, then yeah, that's fine. If you think that he's going to be the closer, then great. Closer for $1, cool. If you think he's going to make the starting rotation, $1, cool. But with the position that Bryce is in the draft, Bryce had like $130 or $40 going into the draft. Bryce only had like $20 less than Chad. Like, he had really good values on his team. He spent over $100 in the draft. He spent 36 on DeGrom, 18 on Class A, 28 on Grisham, 37 on Cabrian Hayes. But here's where I can't fault Bryce: is Bryce made the bad calculation of putting out Garrett Whitlock for $1, which tied up his 7th pitcher spot, which means that he only had 3 hitter spots left, and he had like $75 to spend at that point. So when you look at spending $37 on Cabrian Hayes, you want to throw up in your mouth. But the rationale behind it is that if you have $75, you have way more money than everybody else. Just get the best 3 players that are left on the board. And he looked at Trent Grisham and Cabrian Hayes as 2 of the best hitters that were left on the board, more than a Soler, more than a Brandon Crawford, or whoever else kind of went later. And he's like,
what about Justin Turner 4 picks later? Why didn't he bid you for Justin Turner?
It's a good question.
My thing
is,
in
which that happened.
It was like 4 picks later, you put up Justin Turner. And that's my thing with Bryce, is like the fact that it even got that high, let the other dude get Cabrian Hayes. My thing is, I understand your aspect of you not wanting to leave money on the table, but I'd rather get Justin Turner at $11 and hope he's a keeper next year than spend 37 on Cabrian, knowing there's no way in hell, unless he hits 350 and hits 40 home runs, that he's a keeper next year. I would rather leave that money on the table and hope to get a value in a Justin Turner that could be a keeper next year than completely punt. Literally, he's punting Cabrian Hayes. There's no way he keeps him next year.
Yeah, exactly. But even looking after, like, who is the guy that you think is definitely better than Cabrian Hayes after him, that like fills a role of third base? I mean, yeah, Turner, you could argue Turner's better, but you could also argue that Cabrian Hayes is better because Cabrian Hayes might steal 20 bases. You got Verdugo, McMahon, Tommy Pham, no disrespect, Frank Schwindel, AJ Pollock, Adolis Garcia, and so it's like Robbie Grossman. So if it's like you look at these guys and you're like, I think that Trent Grisham and I think that Cabrian Hayes are the best 2 players out of those guys that are left, then just go get him, especially when he had boohoo bucks to spend. He just did not execute his draft strategy well. So it kind of ended up being a not good thing for him.
Right.
I'm going to change gears. And Chris, what you got? Was that you? Okay, sorry. I heard somebody say, I'm going to change gears a little bit. And outside that, like I said, I can understand why Bryce did it. That, yeah, it looks really bad when it comes to how the draft panned out for him. But when it comes to probably my worst pick of the draft, I'm actually going to go with Alex Wood at $15 for Krim, just because like there's no real exterior, I don't know the word I'm looking for here, but like the whole draft was still like available, and everyone's budget, nothing was really set in stone yet. All the positions were still there. And to spend $15 on Alex Wood, who has not thrown more than 160 innings since 2015, look it up. I did beforehand. I don't understand why you'd spend that much money when there was still guys on the board that were ranked way ahead of you. Verlanders, the
Ooh.
Webbs, the Rodones, the Manoas, and all those kind of guys. I just can't. I don't know why you would ever spend more than 5 on a guy like Alex Wood this early when
Whoa.
there's probably like 20 more pitchers that are better than him early on.
I'm blown away right now.
I
Really?
thought we were gonna wait for hot takes until after
Yeah.
power rankings, Kyle. Jeez.
Alex Wood, 138 innings last year, 152 strikeouts, a 3.83 ERA. I mean, for $15, and he got him that early in the draft where he could sit back and say, I've already got one pitcher filled in my rotation. And I need 5. I got one for $15 that gets me 150 Ks.
If he pitches 150 innings, he'll get 150 Ks. He's also not getting any younger.
Do you think, no, let me ask you this, at his price for 140 innings, 150 Ks, which is what he did last year at 30 years old. He's not 40, Kyle. At 30 years old, 152 innings or 152 Ks. I'll pay $15 for that.
I mean, I guess, but
And then he got Manoah 4 picks later, which again, I think is one of my values at $30. I think Manoah is going to be an absolute stud in this league. And $30, I think for Manoah, some people might say it's an overpay based on the small sample size. I think it's crazy how those San Francisco pitchers went back to back to back, by the way, but it was a race for pitching. And I think getting a guy like Wood early in the draft for 15 wasn't awful.
Yeah, I have some stuff to say about Creamy's pitching staff, but
and we'll get into it. Yeah, for sure.
We'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of it. I could probably name about 15 pitchers I like better than Alex Wood that were in this draft, and I could probably name about 10 better pitching values in regards to the pitching values that kind of happened too. Like a guy like Patrick Sandoval. What's the difference between Patrick Sandoval and Alex Wood? Patrick Sandoval went for $3 to Jay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
At what point in the draft, though?
Way later. That's kind of the thing. Is just you kind of tie up your budget early on a guy that just doesn't really move the needle. Just not worth spending $15. I just thought it was an overpay. Some other overpays that I had that we're not going to go into depth into, but that I just wanted to list. Personally, I think the overpays were Rizzo for 20, Darvish for 33, Yelich for 31, Suzuki for 25, India for 23, Baду for 13, Corbin for 9, Lourdes Gurriel for 16, Grisham we talked about, Hayes we talked about, Renfroe for 21, Soler for 21, Turner for 12, Carrasco for 11, Rodriguez for 18 to Peter, and Blake Snell for 29. Anything stand out to you on that list, Eric?
No, I agree with you on for most of those for sure. It's one of those things where I also agree Suzuki's an overpay at 25, but at the same breath, I paid 21 for Soler, which I thought was an okay price for the home runs and RBIs. But then I'm sitting there, kind of what we talked about earlier. Why didn't I pay $4 more for Suzuki with the ceiling he has compared to the ceiling a Soler has? So I'm kind of like, yes, Suzuki's an overpay, but I wish I overpaid for him in a sense, if that makes any sense at all. But no, I agree with most of those there for sure. Some of the ones I had as well. For overpays, like I said, Snell at 29 I think was too much. I agree with you on a lot of those. Yelich at 31 I don't think's awful. Again, with the players that were available in the draft, with the caliber of player he is, I don't see a problem someone spending 32 on Mullins and 31 on Yelich this year. I don't. But no, I agree with most of those for sure.
I mean, the guy is 2 years removed from being the MVP runner-up. So, I mean, if you're chasing upside, it's hard to imagine more upside than get anywhere else than what you could get in Yelich for 31. So it's kind of a swing for the fences sort of thing. But I mean, he hasn't been a good baseball player in over a year. He's not playing well this year. And it's kind of, I mean, we talked about this in previous pods, but that whole tip pitching thing with you, Darvish, and Christian Yelich about looking into right field. I mean, that could have been his home splits that year were insane. And that's why he was rising to the MVP caliber player. The Soler and Renfroe thing, it's just the on base percentage thing. They might have like 300 on base percentages. So, you know, for $21 for a guy that's going to drag you down in a category, they don't steal bases. So they're dragging you down in that, and they're going to drag you down in on base percentage. I don't like the values. They're just not the kind of players that I like to have on my roster, even though they might hit 30 to 35 home runs if they can stay healthy and if they stay in the lineup all year.
And that was also a part in the draft, like we talked about, where there was the players were starting to get limited. And I'm like, if I got to spend $20 to fill one of these outfield spots that can get me 30 home runs, I'm going to take it. And that's kind of what that turned into.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to our best values. And Eric, what do you think was the biggest steal of the draft?
There was some interesting. I honestly like overall, and this kind of goes to the overall draft reactions. I don't think there was anything super crazy that happened. I think everyone was pretty on par with what was expected in terms of values and stuff. I think obviously we'll talk about the Tatis thing when it comes to it. That was interesting. That popped early in the draft.
Mhm.
But I think getting a guy like Dustin May for $1 late was huge. I think a lot more. I think people were well more aware of making sure those guys didn't leak through the Severinos of last year, the Eloy Jimenez's that were hurt. But
Mhm.
getting May for $1, I think Flaherty for $9. Um, who else? The
Yeah,
pitcher
Chad
for
got Flaherty and Baz back to back.
yes. And who's the pitcher for Tampa that got hurt? Sorry, that's going to be out all year.
Patino.
Glasnow. Did
Oh,
anyone
last note, yeah.
did anyone get Glasnow?
He got taken in the first round of the
Reserve. And again, for $8, I mean, if you're looking at keepers for next year, these are really, really good prices. Those are some good values I liked for sure. Again, Mullins for 32, I don't think was an overpay at the top. Call me crazy. But again, a caliber of Bellinger for $19, it can look like a total overpay to some, but I think I like it at 19.
Yeah, I mean, the Mullins thing is like the Mullins would probably be like a second to third round pick in a redraft, which kind of puts him at like about a $30 player. So it's not, it's like the inflation didn't really affect him. Like he was the best, maybe second best hitter available. He probably should have went for more like 40 to 50 given the surroundings of the other players that were available. It's not like we had first to second round talent anywhere in this draft. So with him being like the only, top caliber player, I thought he would go for a little bit more than what he did. So I like your point there about it. I think that, yeah, he probably could have went for more. I'm going to disagree with the Dustin May thing. I mean, yeah, Dustin May might come back and be one, but you basically have to punt the whole season on it. I don't think he comes back until at least the All-Star break. And I don't know if they put him in the rotation. They might just leave him in the bullpen. So I think it's kind of going to be a thing. Is it worth rostering Dustin May for an entire year just to maybe keep him for next year if he's not going to pitch in 2023? Do you know, not in pitch in 2022 and not till 2023? Eric, do you know something that I don't on that?
No, but I mean, I did it with Severino for $1 and it's working out for me now. So it works, buddy. He's got to let it ride.
You hope it works out with you for Severino for now.
He's looking good, man. He's looking good early.
You had to roster him all year last year.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Chad got some decent values on some hurt guys. I actually thought there were $2 values that stood out to me that I really liked. First one is going to be Grichuk for $1 by Tyler. Nice job scooping him up. I tried getting him from Crimmy pre-draft. Couldn't happen. They ended up dropping him. I'm like, well, what the fuck? Then the other one I liked most was Brandon Crawford for $1.
Yeah, that was good.
Which was kind of a botched thing because he kind of got thrown back by Christopher, remember, in the Zoom here. But kind
we'll
of
get to that later.
Yeah, benefited Justin there because he was able to scoop him back up for $1. I know somebody, even Tyler, said, like, wait, I thought he was drafted. No, because we had to throw him back. If you were paying attention, he would have been popped up right back on the board there. We had to readjust that and we reset our draft cues and all that. So I like those two values. Tell me about Julio Rodriguez, because you have him as an overpay. I have him as a value, Eric.
I don't know. It's one of those things like I know he's going to play all year, so it's not quite the Wander Franco situation, but I have a tough time paying like $20 on just straight up rookies because it's not often when rookies come up and just tear the league on fire. And the fact you're paying almost $20 for that is tough. I liked getting Wander Franco at $8 last year because I could kind of sit him and for basically have him under $10 for 2 years until I traded him off. I feel like for $20, it's a big price to pay. And again, I'd rather pay the $7 extra for a guy like Suzuki who has a little bit more of the professional experience, as you would say, than Julio Rodriguez. Could he win Rookie of the Year? 100%. So I'm not saying necessarily that it's a bad overpay, but I think based on what we know, it's kind of tough to just. Again, I'd probably take Bellinger for the extra $1. I'll be honest. I think I would.
That was actually about to be my question. So
I would. I mean, Bellinger's done it at the major league level. Julio Rodriguez has not yet. So yeah, I'll pay the extra $1 for Bellinger.
Okay, so common theme here of what we're gonna do is we're gonna do some bold takes here, and we're gonna kind of keep a running tally and tally them up at the end of the year. So Eric, you are saying Cody Bellinger over Julio Rodriguez. I will go Julio Rodriguez over Cody Bellinger. I think that Julio Rodriguez has 30-30 potential. He was a guy that we weren't sure if he was going to steal bases when he got to the bigs, and it's looking like he is. He's already got 2 stolen bases. And if he can turn into like I don't want to say Ronald Acuna because that's his absolute ceiling. But if he can be like a 25-25 guy, even, which I think he can, I think that would make him very fantasy relevant. It'd make him a good value at $18. That's exactly what you wish Trent Grisham was for you last year, Eric. So
Oh yeah, and I do think he's going to be a good baseball player. But again, I'm paying the extra dollar on a guy that's won National League MVP in his career and hits in the Dodgers lineup. I mean, Julio Rodriguez, I know, again, small sample sizes, so I don't really want to get into stats too much in this show. He's struck out 13 times in 28 plate appearances,
and how many
50%.
times has Bellinger struck out?
But I mean, he's got better stats already. Bellinger, compare the numbers. He's probably got better numbers.
If I could do it quickly, I would, but let's see here. Let's see. Julio Rodriguez.
Bellinger's got 3 steals on the year.
Julio Rodriguez has got 2.
Bellinger's got a home run, 3 steals, a 370 OBP.
Okay, so 0 home runs, 0 RBIs for Julio Rodriguez. That's alarming.
Okay.
13 strikeouts, a 120 average, and 2 stolen bases.
So write that on them hot takes. Put it in fucking bold.
All right. So I got to edit this. So Eric says Bellinger over Rodriguez. I say
is that crazy to say for an extra dollar? I don't think
no,
that's a crazy
it's not crazy
thought.
to say, but I just like the upside of Julio Rodriguez.
Sure.
Other values that I have in here were we said Castillo for 23, Tatis for 39. We can get into that in a sec. Romano for 17 is looking pretty good. Vaughn for 8, Patrick Sandoval for 3, Scott Barlow for 6, Adolis Garcia for 1, Trevor Bauer for 9, Grichuk for 1, Alejandro Kirk for 1, Ramon Laureano for 1, Crawford for 1, Mullins 32, Eric, these are yours, Bellinger 19, India 23, DJ LeMahieu 5, Flaherty 9, Baz 9, Suarez 12. That's right. Ranger Suarez for 12, Robbie Grossman 10, and Dustin May for 1. What do you think Christopher, what do you think your biggest draft reaches were? And what do you think your best values that you saw come across?
I actually want to bring up the Julio Rodriguez thing one more time.
Go for it.
Kyle, when do you think he gets to the 25-25 mark? Is it this year? Is it next year? Is it year 3?
I think he could be 20-20 this year, and I think he can be 30-30 next year.
Okay. Because with any prospect, if you're going to take them now, whether it's in the reserve draft or if it's in the actual auction draft when they're on a roster, you're talking about projections and when they're going to hit those projections. Like I did the same thing with Kirilloff on mine, and I know we're not going to get into my team just yet, but like you have to weigh of when they're actually going to hit that stride and when they're going to get to those levels of where you think they're going to be projected at. And that's where it's like, do you go with the surefire thing in Bellinger where you know what the floor is versus the projected ceiling?
I don't think you can talk floor with Cody Bellinger because his floor last year was fantasy irrelevance.
But at the same time, like what were his stats last year? I know what he was.
I mean, agreed. Bellinger was absolutely awful last year, 95 games. But I will say this, he's not had a fantasy irrelevant season prior to that. I mean, the dude's been good every other year. So I don't know. And like, I think you make a perfect point. Julio Rodriguez is 21 years old. We've seen guys come up and debut and be on fire and just light the league on, you know, the world on fire. But it's one of those things like, again, he's 21. When is that going to happen? And at $18, it's like, I love it at 8 or 10.
And you also have Jared Kelenic from last year too.
Yeah, the Jared Kelenics. You have the Randy Arozarenas. Like,
so here's Bellinger's stat line from last year. It was 300 at bats, so about just over half a season, 10 homers, 36 RBIs, 3 steals, a 165 average, and a 240 on base percentage.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can talk floor with Bellinger. Yeah, if Bellinger was coming off, hitting, 25 homers and like his down year was 25 and 90, then yeah, sure. But we've seen the floor from Bellinger. And I mean, we don't even know if Julio Rodriguez's floor is lower.
But you don't know if his ceiling's higher either too.
You
so like you go with the flow with whatever is the average over his career versus, hey, a prospect is a prospect. You don't know what you're going to get until they actually prove it.
Yeah. All right. What were your other biggest reaches and values, Chris? Anything stand out?
I really don't have any room to say because I had my own draft strategy. So I was kind of just kicking back, and we'll get to that later though.
All right. So that brings us to our favorite segment, or our new segment, which is our What the fuck were you thinking? Boneheaded pick of the draft, which goes to Bryce, the Beantown boys, with
Yeah.
the Garrett Whitlock. So we don't need to talk about it really much more, but it was just the Whitlock thing for $1, which locked
It's
up
a
his
domino
pitching
effect.
staff. Yeah, it's the domino effect of what it created. Locked up his pitching staff, which caused him to have to spend 37 on Cabrian Hayes and 28 on Trent Grisham. Just very poor planning, very poor execution, which makes Bryce our biggest loser, my biggest loser anyway, of our auction. Yeah, I mean, Bryce going in with all the money that he had and looking of what he could have done, the players that he could have gotten. I mean, he had room to go get Mullins and DeGrom and probably O'Neill and probably another pitcher. And instead he executed it horribly. And he ended up with no pitcher who's pitching right now because he took DeGrom. He took Garrett Whitlock, who's not in the rotation and not in not the closer. So he didn't walk out of the draft with a single pitcher that's pitching right now worth the damn. And he got his biggest position players. Let me pull up his biggest position players were Trent Grisham, Cabrian Hayes, and Colton Wong. I guess he got Class A, so I can't say he didn't get a single usable pitcher. He got Class A, so wrong there. But those were his three hitters: Grisham, Hayes, Wong. Horrible, just terrible draft execution. Expected a little bit better out of Bryce in his second year in the league, but he let us all down. You want to give me your biggest loser outside of Bryce, Eric?
I would say Eddie. I was not a fan of Eddie's draft. I think he could have done a lot better. I think he overpaid on a lot. I'll also kind of throw out there, I'm not a fan of Tyler's draft, but I think that might head into your next segment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on Eddie. Eddie overpaid for very mediocre guys. I mean, 20 for Rizzo is an overpay, 23 for India is an overpay. India was the only quality second baseman that was available in my eyes, so I kind of get the overpay, but 23 is still definitely an overpay on a bad Reds team. Corbin for 9. Corbin doesn't have any business being on anybody's pitching staffs this year. Blake Snell for 29. No, thank you.
Ugh.
You could have had him for, I think,
A lot of overpays.
for 30 or 27 or something. He didn't keep him. Hauk for 5 is decent. Plesac for 1. He's not going to strike anybody out. Dustin May for 1. I mean, Eddie needed pitching, so for him to take Dustin May in the regular auction was a little bit of a head scratcher because he actually needed pitching. He doesn't need stashaways. And Yastrzemski for 3. I'm just not a big fan of his, so I just thought there was better outfielders available at that time. Tyler, we're going to disagree on Tyler. I like what Tyler did in the draft. Seiya Suzuki off to a hot start. You pay for the hometown guy. You got to pay the Cubs discount. He might have a 380 plus on base percentage. That was kind of his specialty. Suzuki could be a 30-20 guy with a 380 on base percentage. That would make him like basically Cedric Mullins. So I actually like the value. I don't like the value there. I think it was an overpay just because we actually don't know what we're getting, but he does have that ceiling of could be something. Dylan Carlson for 9 may look like an overpay, but I think he's going to hit leadoff for the Cardinals. You know, he's got a good glove. He's going to be in the lineup for them every day. Romano for 17 was probably the best reliever in the draft. He's already got 5 saves. He's just freaking killing it. Gallegos for 15. He got 2 surefire. I don't know if Gallegos surefire closer, but he's definitely their highest leverage guy that they're going to use for get saves. Barlow for 6. He's got saves locked up. That's for sure. If he wants to, that was a great value there. Stevenson for 9, big time overpay, but I loved Grichuk for 1. What didn't you like about Tyler's draft?
Well, I think Barlow's, I don't think who's going to put him in their lineup knowing the Royals are only going to win 60 games. I mean, really, I mean, are you going to put a closer in that might get you 20 saves on the year? Might. I mean, I don't know. I mean, $6, sure, you could argue that's fine, but I mean, I don't like that too much. I'm looking at it more from his team perspective. Why draft 3 closers? Because I know you could sit there and argue, well, now he's got closers and he can trade him off as pieces and blah, 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 and do all that spiel. But the way I look at it is if you're going to start 3 closers every week and head to head, if they get rocked once, you're losing ERA every week. You're losing whip every week. If that closer gets hit up for 3-4 runs and you only have 3 starters to kind of back that up with you, I don't think it's feasible for Tyler to go out there and start that many closers in his lineup. And if you're not, then you should have went and got something else. I could argue that the values were fine. I don't think he really overpaid on a lot. I just was stunned at the direction of the draft. I feel like he could have went a completely different way because again, now you're stuck with 3 closers. This is the same thing that happened to Justin last year, and he was trying to pawn him off all season until he got rid of him. So I don't know. I think the direction was wrong.
I disagree. but we'll move on. Biggest winners. I'm gonna say my biggest winner is actually going to be Phil, who's actually a team we haven't really talked about yet. Phil came into the draft with one big need. We knew his offense was loaded. He came in with a need for pitching, and he got it. He got arguably the best pitcher in the draft, Carlos Rodon, for 32. Then he got a closer for a contender, Taylor Rogers, for 16. Then he got Luis Garcia, who pitched very well. I'm not a huge fan of Luis Garcia, but I know he's pretty high on him, and hopefully you can get him 150, 160 innings of quality innings. Bauer, which is more upside than anybody else that was taken in this draft. And Carlos Carrasco, who's actually currently, last time I checked, still dealing for the Mets right now, and is looking really stellar. So he addressed the biggest need that he had in the draft with some of these guys, and I think he rounded out his pitching staff well. So I think he's going to be one of the top teams when it comes time to do power rankings in a little bit. But I really liked what he did.
I'm curious though, if is Rodon worth it at $32? You're all about innings and getting innings in, and then you got a guy like Rodon has never pitched more than 135 innings in his career, but you're fine with him spending 32 on that. But Alex Wood at half the price was that much worse?
I think the difference is that Alex Wood has more of a track record of being hurt for he's like 12 or he's 10 years into his career and never really been healthy in the last 6 years. Carlos Rodon's still kind of on the come up, and I do think that Carlos Rodon is a significantly better pitcher when healthy than Carlos Rodon is. I mean, yeah, you do have a point. I'll give you that. I mean, maybe there shouldn't be a $20 difference between those two guys when you look at what we have. But yeah, I just think that Carlos Rodon has been nothing but a solid pitcher. And I guess you could say the same thing about Alex Wood. But
I mean, Alex Wood has literally had a better career than Rodon. Rodon had a better year, but Alex Wood's had a better career. And I don't even think that's disputable. Last year was Rodon's first year under a 4 ERA? I mean, it's not been good. So to pay $32 for that, hoping that he's the guy from last year when he didn't even hit 140 innings. I don't know. That's why I'm surprised you have Alex Wood as the biggest overpay of the draft when Rodon's been a worse pitcher in his career.
Yeah, one could argue that. Strikeout numbers too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I get it. And that's why I'm saying Rodon could be the pitcher from last year and he's worth it. But
I mean, an argument could definitely be made. If you're saying that the only difference between Carlos Rodon and Alex Wood is that Carlos Rodon's going to strike more people out, that doesn't make him a $20 better player. So yeah, I mean, you do bring up a valid point there. I'll give you some credit there, Eric. I might have to eat some crow on that, but
I'll get some extra credit in class. Come on.
Yeah, Eric gets some extra credit, showing the teacher up. But yeah, I just think that Carlos Rodon I just think that he's a much better pitcher than Alex Woods, and I just think that it just has to be left at that.
All right.
All right, and then
now, right?
What's that?
Much better pitcher now,
Correct.
Because Rodon in the White Sox rebuilding years, that was just
It was
hard to watch, especially being a homegrown draft pick. It's just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing with this rebuild? But then you look at, when was Ethan Katz hired? I'm throwing out names that you probably don't even know who they are, the pitching coach. When he was hired, he turned Giolito around, he turned Rodon around, he turned Cease around. They started getting better when they hired him.
Fair enough.
That's why you got to be a White Sox fan.
Yeah.
You got to have an inside track.
I had another winner too, and my winner is actually going to be Eric.
Oh, thank
Eric,
you.
I thought that you executed your draft strategy pretty well. Do you want to take us through how you did it?
Yeah, I mean, basically the way I was looking at it again was, I think after we did that show and we broke down my team, I knew that I didn't really have a guy that could go out there and get 20 steals. So what I did is I got Badu and Grossman, who should both in Detroit's lineup. They both can steal 20 bags. Badu's young. I know you might have looked at him as an overpay at $13. If I can get 20 steals, his on base isn't awful. He's going to hit close to 15, 20 home runs. I'll take it. I think LeMahieu at 5, who knows if he plays every day, but I'll tell you what, talk about a guy that had one bad year in his career, and I got him for $5. And he's hitting in that lineup. So I liked, again, LeMahieu at 5. Clevenger comes back literally next week, and he's been a really productive pitcher in his career. Verdugo on base machine. So again, I think I locked in my stolen bases, which is what I needed. I got a little bit of power on Soler. I only needed to fill one pitcher spot, and the fact I did it with Clevenger at 10. I think I rounded out my team pretty well. I didn't get a superstar. I did go in thinking of maybe getting one big superstar, but I think I balanced it out.
Yeah, I didn't think you did a bad job. And then who else we got here? Anyone else that had a notable draft for you, Eric?
Another winner I had, I think Corey did a pretty good job getting his pitching. Obviously, we'll talk into it later. For being the new guy, again, I know that's been a topic of conversation this week. I thought he did a pretty good job of taking over and doing what he needed to do to kind of get that team looking halfway decent. He had a pretty good solid start with what was left over, but again, Castillo 23, Rogers at 25. Again, I think he got those both at great values. Garcia, Brantley are going to be on base machines, and Connor Joe early. Who knows what that could be at $2? So I think Corey did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Connor Joe. That's a guy that I'd kind of like to trade for at some point. I think he's going to be hitting at the top of the order in Colorado. You play him when he's at home, maybe you bench him when he's on the road, but definitely be a quality contributor for Colorado if he's in the lineup every day. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Corey's draft, especially not his reserve draft. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I just not a huge fan of a lot of the guys that we have here. Michael Brantley is much better in a batting average league than he is an on-base percentage league. And I just think his best years are obviously behind him at his age. Ahmed Rosario is just a guy that I just don't want on any fantasy team. I don't care if it's a 20-team league. I just don't want Ahmed Rosario. Keibert Ruiz is an overpay for $5 when there's plenty of other dollar catchers. You could have saved the $4, spent it elsewhere. I do like Trevor Rogers and Castillo at those values, but just overall, not a huge fan of the draft. Also, not a huge fan of Justin's draft. I thought he got some decent guys. I thought Lance Lynn for 24 maybe turns into being quality, but maybe it just kind of fizzles out. You had Justin as a winner.
Yeah, I did. I think I know Lynn's going to be out for a little bit. But I think at $24, he's a possible keeper next year with the way he's pitched. I mean, he's just always been productive in his career. So if he can be competitive and get him back midseason, Descalfani for 5, Suarez was amazing last year. I know he's just now getting in the rotation. We'll see how that works. Pollock had the best year of his career last year. To get a catcher like Crawford, one of the best values of the draft we had, I think overall he didn't really overpay on anybody, and he kind of filled out his roster how he needed to. I think he jumped up, and we'll get into that later, a couple spots on the power rankings with his draft.
Actually, the more I look at it, the more I'm like, actually, Lance Lynn for 24 is pretty good. Descalfani, if he pitches like he pitched last year, just in that something about the San Francisco rotation, those guys just pitch well. Ranger Suarez for 12, I like too. He had a really solid end of the year last year. AJ Pollock for 6, maybe one of the Sox fans overpay for him in a trade. I don't really know anything about Joe Ryan, to be honest. Haven't really heard much about him. But Enrique Hernandez for $1, he's going to hit leadoff for Boston. He already has. Rafael Devers already driven him in like 6 times already. Sean Murphy for 1, sure, $1 catcher, not bad. And Brandon Crawford, one of the best values I said of the draft for 1. So, I mean, I thought actually, yeah, he did have a decent draft as we were kind of looking at it. I think as far as notables go, is there anything we missed?
No, I think that's kind of about it in terms of kind of looking at the draft as a whole. Again, overall, I don't think anyone outside of Bryce shocking the world and making everyone scratch their heads, there wasn't anything that totally stood out. I think everyone was kind of within realm of where they were supposed to be for the most part, outside of a couple highlighted ones.
We never got to the Tatis conversation. So what'd you have to say about that?
I wish someone would have drove you up a little bit more. I do. I think it was obviously, we talked about it in the show prior. I think it was a smart move for you to get him back at that price, especially with you being one of the better teams in the league. I see no problem with it. I think you did a good job. I only wish someone would have. How high would you have gone?
I had 50 written down.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So so basically you were totally fine throwing him back in and getting him back at a little bit higher of a price just to guarantee an extra year.
Yeah, I had him for 46. I was like, if I could get him back for 46 or less and then save a year, then that's dandy. I'll probably go up to 50 if I have to with inflation.
Yeah.
Just because part of it's a mental thing of just being like, I made the trade. I still want to be able to reap the benefits of that trade, trading for a guy like Tatis. And we're talking about upside. You just can't pick up Tatis's upside anywhere else. Right. I think for some teams to take on Tatis, it would be tough to kind of withstand the beating you're going to take. And my team right now does not look good on paper until I get him back, until I get Laureano. And now I've lost Tasker Hernandez. My outfield outfield is looking brutal right now. So we'll see how good I can weather the storm. Dave is like killing me right now in head to head. So it's going to be a brutal month or two stretch for me. But we did get some good news on Tatis. He's I hear he's like a week or two away from taking batting practice.
Nice.
So they're saying he might even be ahead of schedule. So if
I did want to.
by the All-Star break, that'd be a huge win.
Heck yeah, it would. I did want to say this about Chad's team. Because this is more draft related than whole team related. I think would have had an A+ draft if he does two things differently. If he spends $3 extra on DeGrom instead of Darvish, okay? Because Chad's team's not good. We're gonna get into that. He's gonna be the first team we talk about in the consensus rankings, right? If he spends $3 extra on DeGrom at 36, and then instead of 21 on a Renfro, he goes up and gets Tatis instead. Because I'm telling you right now, again, we could argue how good they're going to be this year. It doesn't matter for Chad. If he could have got DeGrom, as you said, you would have got him to 50. So let's say he gets him at 51, and then you get DeGrom at 36. Based on what other pieces you have, those young pieces, Boz at 9, Flaherty at 9. Chad's already kind of creeping up as having, I hate to say it already, but a decent keeper team next year. I think if he would have went ahead and just said, screw it, I'm punting the entire year and gotten Tatis and DeGrom, I would have said Chad had an A+ draft. I really would have. I think he would have had a perfect draft.
I'm going to expand more on Chad's team in a bit. So stay tuned. I'm going to expand more on it because I don't want to go too far into it because I'm going to talk about it in a little bit.
For sure.
Any big winners stand out to you, Chris, before we move on to the reserve draft?
I will say right off the bat, my biggest winner based on pre-draft rankings was Dave.
Interesting.
And I know we already talked about a couple.
Dave had the best draft and how much he improved his team, right?
And we'll get to that when we get to my power rankings when we start that. But
it
that
is
was
going early as Dave is second place in Roto based on his current standings. All right, so then we can kind of page over here to our reserve draft. We don't have to go too in depth in the reserve draft. I don't think a lot of these players are going to really make big impacts this year. There's plenty of good values to be had, plenty of not so good values that I think. Eric, what stands out to you as like probably the best pick of the reserve draft?
I need to actually try to get to that screen, but while I'm thinking of it, let's see. I can kind of see it on yours a little bit. It's tough. I'd say honestly getting Strasburg in the first round is not bad. I think a lot of the prospects were taken last year, so it wasn't like a super prospect heavy draft. I will say this, I don't know what the huge craziness over O'Neal Cruz being first was. I know it was Jay's pick, so we assumed it, but when he didn't take him and everyone was like, it's gotta be the pick. It's gotta be the pick. He's not coming up with Wander expectations, guys, and he plays in freaking Pittsburgh. I mean, Wander played on a good playoff team. Why is everyone acting like O'Neal Cruz is going to be this, again, a great prospect?
Be on a good team to be fantasy relevant.
No, you don't. But again, what makes you think he's any better of a pick than Wander Franco was last year?
Because I think that O'Neal Cruz is like the next Bo Jackson. Like I'm gonna go ahead and put that on the bold takes thing. No, like the thing with O'Neal Cruz is apparently like he hit one home run last year, and apparently like the exit velocity on this home run was in like the 99th percentile. I don't know what the exact numbers on it were, but like he just obliterates baseballs. Plus, he's a speed guy. He's a 6'7" shortstop. He's basically like shortstop Aaron Judge when it comes to how he impacts the ball with speed. I think.
How long does he stay at shortstop being 6'12"?
Well, how long until he has back issues from bending over the field ground balls at 6'7" is definitely a question. But I actually think they're going to move him to the outfield. I think that's the whole reason why he's down in the minors right now is I think they want to get him reps in the outfield before calling him up. Air quotes, we won't get him reps in the outfield, service time manipulation bullshit. But I think that he's actually going to be really impactful this year and beyond. I think he has the potential to be a stud, but I mean, high ceiling, high floor kind of guy. He could come up and light the world on fire, hitting balls out of ballparks, not just out into the stands, literally out of ballparks.
So you think he would have been you think he was the consensus should have been number one pick then?
I think so. I think he was the only prospect that was drafted or could have been drafted that is actually going to be that fantasy relevance in the first 2-3 months.
Interesting. Mackenzie Gore looked good yesterday.
That is the exception because Mackenzie Gore I actually have as my number one value.
Okay.
Mackenzie Gore taken in the 8th round by Eddie. So Eddie, nice job picking up Mackenzie Gore. He wasn't really a guy that was on my radar just because I wasn't sure he had a rotation spot just because they had Nick Martinez, they have Blake Snell, they have Clevenger coming back soon. So I'm not sure who the rotation ends up being, but if Mackenzie Gore like can end up staying with the rotation to be $1 for the next 2 years as getting your last pick, Mr. Irrelevant in your reserve, I think that could be a huge win. He hasn't. The problem with Mackenzie Gore is he has yet to prove that he can actually be a major league pitcher, but he's done a lot of behind the scenes stuff with tweaking some of his rotation stuff, getting rid of some of the hitches and changing his delivery.
That was his first start. That was his first appearance in the bigs ever. Was it not?
Okay, yes. I mean, I meant to say quality pitcher in the minors because last year, even when he was terrible, even when he was like being sent down, he was terrible in the minors last year. He just got lit up in every start. So, we're not sure if he can really be productive yet. But I mean, he's a 1 year removed for being like the consensus top pitcher. I mean, he was the number 1 pick in the reserve draft last year for how we're on him. So, I kind of like that value there. Some of the values that I like, Eric, I thought you got a really good value. I totally forgot about this guy, but Grayson Rodriguez in the 7th. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to be really good. I don't know when they'll call him up. He might not. The only problem is he might not be up this year.
I think he is going to be up this year. I really do.
He should. I mean, certainly he should. But the Orioles aren't going to be relevant. And why?
They're going to want him and Adley working together as soon as possible, man. He's a stud.
Why didn't they have Adley Rutschman up last year?
I think catchers are a little bit more slow paid. You don't ever see catchers come up at 20, 21 years old because of just how much they have to learn.
Wouldn't you think they would want Adley Rutschman working with their pitchers last year and learning all that stuff last year? I think that maybe the Orioles just keep these guys down because they know they're irrelevant and they might just keep them down. So
what? Okay, that's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, but like you just keep pushing that service time back.
Sure, you might.
I mean, the Orioles haven't been relevant in years, so it hasn't worked out for them. But I just don't think that that's in their best. I don't think that's what they want to do.
And well, again, it goes with the reason I took Adley in the first round. Again, at $8, he was taken in the first round last year, didn't come up. I am totally comfortable taking him in the first round this year because prospects, we had this conversation earlier as well, but when he comes up, he should be a top 10 hitting catcher in the league, which honestly isn't all that hard to do at this point because there's not 10 amazingly hitting catchers in the league. So the way I look at it is Contreras is gone next year because he's 14. Adley's my catcher because he's 25 next year. Adley's going to come up this year, and if he hits even not too well, I'll keep him at $8. I mean, I don't know. I think he's got too much potential. Him and Rodriguez, they're going to be good.
I am scratching my fucking head because Eric, I think you're in bozo. I can't justify it. Adley Rutschman's ceiling is being Mitch Garver.
Where do you get that from? Where?
Because catchers don't come up and play well. Catchers don't burst onto the scene and hit well. They have so much other stuff going on. We've talked about this before.
What's the last biggest
again on these podcasts, Eric, where catchers, you just said it 2 minutes ago. You said catchers are slow to develop and they don't hit well because they have so much to learn when they get to the show. And I don't think that Adley Rutschman's going to come up hitting 30 home runs.
I'm not saying that either, but
want an $8 catcher. Even the best case scenario is he's Mitch Garver, and Mitch Garver went for 7 in the draft. If you want a cheap catcher, get a cheap catcher. You can get a top 13 catcher for free in the auction. Why pay $8 for the chance?
I'll tell you why.
Rutschman might be something.
I'll tell you why. Because name the last big time prospect catcher that's come up.
Danny Jansen.
Yeah, but he was never known for his bat. He was always a defensive guy. Adley Rutschman was literally the first pick in the draft. This guy is coming up. I mean, on the MLB's 20 to 80 scale, dude, they have him with 60 hits, 65 power. This is like the first big bat prospect catcher that we've seen in a long time. Look at his numbers in AAA last year, man.
You give me a number of home runs that Adley Rutschman is going to hit this year. I'll take the under.
Well, it all depends when he gets called up.
I'm going to go under 15 home runs for Adley Rutschman.
And that might be completely fair. He had 23 in the minors last year. That's not crazy to say, but he had a 400 on base last year in the minors, 23 home runs. He's a legit bat. I don't know why you're comparing him to Mitch Garver.
Chris, you have something to say?
Would you take Wilson Contreras if he hit 12 home runs in his first year?
God, no.
Okay.
Well, wait, what do you mean by that?
Would you have taken him in the reserve draft?
Oh, no. God, no.
In his first year?
No.
Because Wilson Contreras hit in his first year. What, he hit 12 home runs in 70 games.
Yeah.
So like
on pace, that's good pace.
Name a catcher right now on anyone's roster who's going to hit 12 home runs in that 70 games.
So
If you wanna
70
double-
games, so over a full season, that's 24 homers. Because catchers don't get 600 at bats.
But how many catchers are even hitting 24 homers now? You got Salvador, Muriel Muto, maybe.
I think Wilson Contreras will. I think Alejandro Kirk will. I think Christian Vasquez will get close.
Oh man.
I think Tyler Stevenson probably will. I think Keibert Ruiz probably will.
I don't know. I don't know about all that.
I just think that these guys that have been doing this for a while, these veterans like Tyler Stevenson and Keibert Ruiz, I guess Ruiz isn't really a veteran, but just guys that they're just going to hit 20 home runs this year that you can get for $1. Why waste a first round draft pick on a guy who might be good that you have to stash? Why stash a catcher whose ceiling is being his value?
His ceiling is being the best hitting catcher in the league.
When was the last time a catcher came up and was the best hitting catcher in the league in his first 3 years?
Joe Mauer.
So 20 years ago?
He's not that old. Holy hell.
Having to play first base.
Later in his career, and that's fine if he plays first base. That doesn't bother me. I don't know, man. I just feel like at $8, again, I get to replace Wilson next year. Adley's coming up this year. If he hits anything good at all, I get an $8 catcher who, yes, his ceiling is a top 3 hitting catcher in all of baseball because his bat is that good. But again,
Wilson Contreras, who you currently have for $9.
Exactly. So I get him at the same price next year.
It's his ceiling, though. You're drafting him at his ceiling. Don't ever draft somebody at his ceiling.
Oh my. So
he hasn't proven to be anything yet.
Neither is O'Neal Cruz, but you wanted him. O'Neal
Cruz. Julio Rodriguez at that point too.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing. I'm getting Rushman for 8. He's getting Julio Rodriguez for 18. What's the difference? But Julio Rodriguez is a value.
Because Julio Rodriguez is actually on the roster right now. He's healthy. He's going to steal bases, and he doesn't have to learn how to catch 5 different pitchers in his rotation and and have the track record of catchers coming up slow as they always do. And you can't find a serviceable outfielder for $1 at the end of the draft.
When Adley Rushman's on my team 3 years from now, I want this conversation.
I'm going to laugh in your face if Adley Rushman is on your team right now. And
let's do it. I can't wait. I can't wait.
For mediocre production.
I cannot wait.
Thing this thing is going to be on YouTube.
Yes,
so.
I cannot wait.
I certainly hope that you keep Adley Rushman at $13. And he's a freaking bum.
I can't wait.
All right. Who else do I got here? I liked Ashby in the 8th for Peter. I think if he cracks the rotation, he could be good. Jesus Sanchez in the 5th, I think is decent for myself. CJ Abrams in the 5th for Chad. Reed Detmers, I like for Tyler in the 5th. Matt Brash in the 4th. Conforto in the 4th, I like for you, Eric. Riley Green in the 3rd. Hunter Green in the 3rd. Riley Green in the 2nd. Tyler McGill in the 2nd. I think he's going to be good. Jesus Luzardo in the 1st. Looked really good in his first start. I had Strasburg in the 1st and O'Neal Cruz probably in the 1st. Is probably the best thing to ever happen to Phil in the 1st.
Your rationale is insane.
My biggest reach, obviously, Adley Rutschman in the 1st by Eric. Matt Barnes, if you want to give me shit about Matt Barnes in a sec, you can. Soto in the 1st. We'll see if he keeps the job all year, but it's looking pretty good so far. Glasnow in the 1st was okay. Brennan Davis in the 2nd for Peter, I didn't like. Hosmer in the 3rd for Krim, I didn't like. And Harrison Bader in the 4th for Jay, I didn't like. The rest, it's just kind of like whatever. I just don't think that those guys are going to be productive this year in regards to kind of what they are. So you can't really criticize people for picking bad players in the reserve draft. It's all bad players. So I'm not going to go too in depth about the way guys fucked up in the reserve draft, but I just think some of those guys like Eric Hosmer, just like, what is Eric Hosmer going to be? Like, he's not going to hit 30 home runs. And I just don't understand why he's an asset to a fantasy team. All right. Anything to add to that, Eric?
No, I think the reserve draft went about. Reserve draft is interesting because I think it gets a little wacky because obviously everyone has completely different ideas on players. Clearly, I mean, in regards to the prospects and everything, you've never been a prospect guy, so this conversation is interesting. That Cruz is the godsend holy grail, and then Rushman 5 picks later is like, but overall, I think the reserve draft is interesting because again, there is so many different strategies, and it's cool to see who gets guys late. I hope Conforto signs soon because I don't know how long I can just have him sitting on my bench for, but I do hope he pans out.
Yeah, I in regards to my biggest winner of the reserve draft, I think it was Tyler. I really liked what he did. He picked up 2 quality starting pitchers and Cal Quantrill and Tyler McGill. I mean, Quantrill, if he did what he did last year, he's a great value here in the reserve draft. And Tyler McGill looks really good in his first 2 starts. With as long as DeGrom is going to be out with some of the guys that they have that have injury histories in their rotation, I think it's not going to be hard for Tyler McGill to keep a spot in the rotation if he's pitching well, and he looks very good. Then to take Jeremy Pena in the 3rd round, starting shortstop for the Astros in a very good lineup, who's their scouts are just raving about. All his teammates are raving about him. I like that pick in the 3rd round. And then Jake Fraley in the 4th, the guy, a little power speed combo. He's actually played 6 out of 6 games for the Reds so far. I was worried about his playing time. That's why I didn't take him sooner, but he's looking like he's playing every day for the Reds. So that's kind of a good sign. Then Reed Detmers in the 5th. I think he's also going to be a quality contributor to Tyler's rotation. I really like what he did in his first 5 rounds. I think he was the big winner of the reserve draft.
All right.
Losers of the reserve draft. Do you want to do losers of the reserve draft?
No, I didn't really look at it too in depth there. No.
All right, then I'll give some of mine. I thought Justin didn't really do anything in the reserve draft. Tony Gonsolin, he'll be good if he stays in the rotation, but as Christopher hopes that doesn't happen because he took Andrew Heaney. So he hopes that Heaney gets that 5th spot and not Tony Gonsolin. Didn't really think Justin really made any other impactful picks in that reserve draft. I thought Jay's picks were meh. I think Greg Soto could be decent if he stays the closer all year, but I think Follmer is going to get plenty of saves too. Then I didn't really like the players they took after that. I don't really know what Harrison Bader brings fantasy wise. Trey Mancini, I'd like it better if he was still outfield eligible, but you can find a first baseman that's going to hit 25 home runs pretty much anywhere. Seth Beer's going to do that. He was available. Didn't love what Corey did. He was probably my biggest loser of the reserve draft. Can you looking at Corey's team, dethrone Kyle here? Can you give me one impact player that Corey drafted in the reserve round?
I know Noah's got a pretty good pedigree. He should be decent for Atlanta. So I mean, Lorenzo Cain, as long as he plays every day, wouldn't he be fantasy relevant? He still steals bags, has an okay OBP. I don't know. I mean, I click on his numbers. Let's see. Click on them stats.
Let's see here.
Hit that stat.
Let's see. Last year he had 13 steals and actually only 250 at bats. That wouldn't be bad at all.
No. So I think yeah.
He's played 5 games so far this year though, because they signed McCutchen. They got McCutchen, Renfroe, and Yelich in the outfield though.
Yeah, you got to give Kane and McCutchen some days off. They're getting a little old.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not going to play every day. Yeah, I just don't think there's really that many impactful bats to kind of be scooped up here. And I also didn't like what you did in the reserve draft, Chris. I don't think you really got any impact players. Would you care to elaborate on who's gonna be?
Oh, I disagree on some.
Who's gonna be your knight in shining armor from the reserve draft?
No, I hated my reserve draft because Eric stole 4 of the people that I was.
Oh no!
I was going to take Corey Kluber, Michael Conforto, Brady Singer, and Grayson Rodriguez in those rounds.
Wow, I did not know I screwed you that bad, man.
I was targeting, and you took them 2 picks before me.
Oh no, I must have been on your shit list that night. Damn.
Yep. That's that. My reserve draft went from I had those players, I had certain ones that I wanted to get that were still on the board, and they just flew. The other one that I was targeting was Riley Green. I think who's that? Eddie that took him. Man, I was
be good.
So mad at that too. So I that was 3 picks before me.
Yep.
So I had to scramble and say, crap, there goes my guy. What do I do?
Yeah, you're not going to give me shit about taking Matt Barnes.
That was definitely. I mean, I tried telling you before you even taking him. He's not the closer. He's not the. I think I said it like 3 times. He's not the closer. You were dead set on taking him. So I don't know.
I don't announce my picks before I pick them.
We had the Barnes conversation a little bit during it.
Yeah.
I tried to have the Barnes conversation with Bryce before I dropped him because I was like, if he was going to be a closer. If he was going to regain that closer role at $1, I would have kept him.
That's what I said in the keeper show. I was surprised to see him throw him back. It's the thing about it is like there's no relievers on contending teams. Just like they don't go this late. They're either going to crop up because of an injury or something else. They're on the waiver wire. We don't know who they are yet. But like the guys that get taken in this range are Bender, Trevino, Bednar, Barlow, and guys who either don't really have the role or are on bad teams. So like to take a swing on a guy who I thought was going to be the closer on an actual contending team, I think was huge. I think it's just kind of the swing there. I was happy to get Bender around later. And Stephen Kwan in the 3rd. I mean, Stephen Kwan is basically
he's doing well
so far this year. So let's move on. Oh man, we are running way behind, but that's okay. Let's talk about the trade
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's talk about that trade really quick because it'll when we go into the kind of the team by team thing, this will kind of affect what happened with it. So let's go. Oh, I don't want pending transactions. I want transaction history. We've only had one trade so far post draft, and it was. Oh wait, am I in the wrong year?
You're in
Yeah,
2021.
I'm in the wrong year. There we go. All right, so we want the trade between Phil and Bryce. Blockbuster. Bryce is known to make week one blockbusters. He's done it 2 years in a row. Bryce gave up Ozzie Albies, Frankie Montas, Miles Straw, Salvador Perez. He got back Yasmani Grandal, Ryan McMahon, Kyle Tucker, and Eduardo Rodriguez. Wow. Eric, what happened here?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. It's just so early to be throwing. I don't want to say throwing teams away, but it's really tough to make trades early in the season because at least you kind of like what you have. But obviously Bryce starts talking and he likes making his trades. But here's my thing. Obviously you're taking Perez over Grandal. Now Grandal over a whole entire season, that OBP last year was something else. But who knows, the home runs, the RBIs, we'll see if he can do that over the course of a season. So you could argue that Grandal over the course of a whole year is equal to Perez. Straw's going to get the steals. And if you look at what McMahon did last year, McMahon again had a pretty darn good year last year. I think people are kind of sleeping on McMahon a little bit in terms of what he was able to produce looking at his numbers. Kyle Tucker, I am probably taking Kyle Tucker over Ozzie Albies for sure. 100%. So I don't know. I mean, I think they're debatable and they're the same price. So I think, again, you could call that a wash. McMahon over Straw, I'm probably taking because I'm not taking the Straw stolen bases. Grandal and Perez, you could argue Perez over Grandal, sure, but I think you could argue it the other way. The big one for me is the Montas Rodriguez. I've never been a huge Eduardo Rodriguez guy. He's been okay in his career. He's kind of put together some okay seasons, some good ones. I'm a little bit higher on Montas's ceiling, but overall, I don't think this is as bad as people are making it out to be. Because I think Bryce did okay. What do you think?
I was far apart on it at first. You're kind of helping bring the gap a little closer together with some of your rationale here. I thought this was kind of some highway robbery from Phil. I like the way that he made out with this. When I look at trades, I kind of, because I'm in several other leagues, I kind of have a good feel for like where guys typically go in drafts. I mean, Salvador Perez is like a 3rd round draft pick. And I mean, Kyle Tucker was taken at like the late first in some drafts, kind of early second. I think that Kyle Tucker is a notch above Ozzie Albies. They're the same price. I'll give the edge to Kyle Tucker. Probably going to hit 35 home runs, driving 100. It's concerning that he's hitting 6th, and they don't want to move him out of that 6th spot for whatever reason in Houston. I don't know why that is.
Now compare McMahon and Straw though. Straw's going to get you the stolen bases, right? But I mean, look at McMahon's line last year.
Yeah, but I mean, like McMahon, the thing about McMahon is like, what does McMahon do that you can't find on the waiver wire? 23 homers, 86 RBIs, 80 runs, and 6 stolen bases with a mediocre average and on-base percentage.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think that's a pretty good line. I don't know. I mean, that's not bad.
For what? 86?
Yeah.
It's okay, but you can find that on the waiver wire.
And that second base position that's so coveted, right? So then tell me what Miles Straw did.
Miles Straw is going to probably steal 40 bases this year.
Right, exactly. So again, I think you could argue, the 30 stolen bases. But again, what else does he give you?
Not a whole lot else. Runs scored because he's going to hit leadoff for Cleveland.
He had the same amount of runs scored, the exact same amount of runs scored as McMahon. So again, what more is Straw giving you than McMahon outside of steals?
Straw didn't hit leadoff for Cleveland all year last year.
Yeah, but again, I don't think this trade's as far off as you can make it. I could argue McMahon's a better value than Straw. I could argue Grandal's similar to Perez. Rodriguez, Montas, again, it's very similar stat lines. Montas had finally a really good year last year. I don't think this is awful. I don't.
Well, I just think that Kyle Tucker over Albies is a slight upgrade. And the slight upgrade from Tucker to Albies does not overweigh the big upgrade from Montas Rodriguez, the big upgrade between Perez and Grandal. And I'd rather have Straw over McMahon in a roto league. So I just think that it was just.
I will say this. Let me say this about Salvador Perez. Let me say this one thing about Salvador Perez. Outside of last year, and obviously it was last year. Crazy. He's been fantasy almost unstartable with his on-base percentage in his career. Fantasy unstartable. Yes, he's giving you the home runs. It's coming at the catcher position. So yes, He's fine, but I know he had the home runs last year. But I'm gonna pump the brakes on Salvador Perez a little bit. I might take Grandal based on what he did last year over Salvador Perez this year. Call me crazy.
Yeah, the thing about Perez though is that like he's basically the last 2 years, he's just been really good. He's been the best catcher in baseball for 2 years in a row. I mean, he had 12 homers or 11 homers, 32 RBIs, and a 353 on base percentage in the shortened season. And then last year, obviously, like
Yeah, I mean, last year's an anomaly. No one could have predicted that.
I mean, yeah, Salvador Perez, if he's 80% of what he was last year, he's still going to be the best catcher in the league. So I just think that he's just really, really good. And I think that even if you split the difference between 353 and 316, I mean, that's going to be a very quality on base center. I'm really high on Salvador Perez.
Now look at Grandal's stat line from last year and tell me how that's not even the second best catcher last year. And he only played 94 games.
It probably is. Yeah. I mean, if Grandal does what he did last year, then
I mean, look at those numbers in 94 games.
Yeah, 420 on base.
Yes.
And a 23 home runs and less than 300 at
That's why, again, I could argue that he's better than Perez, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that is. I mean, like if he keeps that up, that is a 40 home run pace with a much better on base percentage if he keeps it up. But
I don't think Bryce did bad. I mean, the stolen bases, if you're in desperate need, granted, yes, that could win you a whole freaking category, no doubt, with Straw. But I think both sides did well.
All right, and that's our only trade.
Yeah, how about that? Who'd have guessed?
Yeah, so let me get through that. All right.
Just out of curiosity, Kyle, go back to Perez's stat line from before 2020.
Before 2020, okay.
20 home runs.
20 home runs in 4 straight years.
With under 300 OBP, that is ugly.
So
that is ugly.
And go back to what was Rushman's projection for? Is it 20 home runs?
I don't care what Rutschman's projection.
Oh,
well, see, here's the thing. Like,
because what I'm saying right there is Salvador Perez at $7 versus Adley Rutschman at $8. Like, no difference. So if you're gonna take Salvador Perez back in his, bad years, still, like, you have to take Rutschman then.
No, I don't. You can't make me. All right, so here's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna go. Eric and I each have our individual power rankings, and with our power rankings, we've cultivated using a very tricky, very confusing formula to figure out what our consensus rankings are for our power rankings. We're gonna go reverse order, so we're gonna start with our 14th best team, then work our way all the way up to the first team. We're gonna talk about your draft. We're gonna talk about what your team currently looks like now, and then Chris is gonna chime in at the end, say where he has his own personal power rankings for all you guys, and maybe we can post those in a later date after you guys have all heard the podcast. So we're going to start with our 14th team. Not really that hard to figure out who this is going to be. This is definitely going to be Chad's team. Now, I want to lead off Chad's team because, as I said, there's a little bit more to what I wanted to say about Chad's team that I want to kind of hold off until now. I think that Chad gets pretty much an F for the draft. I didn't like the values that he got. I think that, as Eric said, he should have just gone in on some DeGrom and on Tatis and some of those guys. And I think that Chad couldn't really decide whether he wanted to compete this year or wanted to compete next year. And in a way, he's kind of trying to do both, and he kind of screwed himself over by it. When you look at, I'm going to go back to the reserve draft, actually. I think that Chad did a really good job in the reserve draft if he's looking towards next year. I think Tyler Glasnow next year. I don't think that Tyler Glasnow is going to pitch this year. I don't think he's going to be on a mound this year. So, I mean, that's pretty much a next year pick. Max Kepler, not going to be good this year. He's platooning this year, but once they get rid of the shift next year, I think Kepler is going to be really good. Bednar will probably be the closer if they keep him around in Pittsburgh. Maybe not this year, but next year, once he's kind of another year of arbitration. CJ Abrams, another next year guy. I don't know if he's going to stay on the roster all year. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but another prospect guy. Christian Javier, if he can ever crack that Houston rotation, will be good. Anthony Santander, not great. But so he took like a lot of next year guys in the reserve draft, and it could end up being that a lot of these guys that he drafted will be good next year. But if your plan was to plan for next year, then as Eric said, why not just go get the DeGroms and the Tatises and all those other guys? Because that probably should have been your strategy. I'm not a big fan in a 3-year keeper league to ever punt a single year, especially not at draft time, because anything can happen. This is baseball we're talking about here. Salvador Perez just hit 48 home runs last year. Nobody saw it coming. So like anything can happen when it comes to baseball. So I don't think anyone should ever punt at a draft. But in this case, if that was your plan all along, you probably should have just punted at the start. There's not a whole lot to like here. The pitching staff makes me want to puke. The hitting is not great. There's so many holes. Eric, what do you see about Chad's team here?
Yeah, I'll quickly sum that up. Chad's team's not going to be good this year. Again, like I said earlier, I think like you just said, if he would have done DeGrom and Tatis, that makes a world of difference. Because I'll tell you what Chad's got going for him right now is John Means at $14 next year on the $5 increase. Okay. So he's got Means, Shane Baz, Flaherty, and Glasnow for a combined like $40.
Mm-hmm.
If he would have added DeGrom, he would have had 5 pitchers heading into next year at a combined $76, all with ace potential. Flaherty has proven it. Baz has ace potential. We've seen Glasnow do it. Means has been really productive in Baltimore. If he does that, Chad's got 5 pitchers already ready for next year. So he would have had to go into the draft next year with 1 pitcher, and that would have been fine. So then he would have had to work on the offense, which is something that I think is a little bit easier to come by. I like Nathaniel Lowe at $7. Again, Abrams, he's got some young guys, but again, overall, this is a very, very weak team, but with a core of Franco, Kalenic, Means, Baz, Flaherty, Glasnow, there is a ray of hope. I just wish he would have done it a little bit differently. Like Darvish for 32 this year just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. But overall, not a good draft.
Yeah, just kind of confusing. Now it will be an interesting team. I don't think that Chad did a very good job of getting quality assets back last year for the guys that he did trade, but he will, like, if he's kind of irrelevant midway through the year and he wants to make a trade, like, I think that he should get good value for these guys that are essentially on C contracts. We're assuming that Darvish as a $33 player, we're probably going to treat that like a C contract unless Darvish just starts lighting it up again like he can. Logan Webb for 34. He could certainly live up to that if he keeps pitching the way that he is. A solid first 2 starts, 1.29 ERA, 0.7 whip. If he pitches like he pitched last year, then yeah, he will be a $34 player, but maybe somebody will pay up for him. And who was the other guy? Oh, Cedric Mullins, Hunter Renfroe. These guys, I don't know if they'll be worth these contracts, depending on if they continue to grow as players or if they kind of just plateau. Then, I mean, he might be able to get some good values in some cheaper, younger players. But I think that should be his goal, is to kind of get more cheaper values next year. Some if I don't know if Brendan Crawford, but I mean, if I was him, like, I would trade a Hunter Renfroe for a Randall Grichuk and save the $20 and hope that Randall Grichuk becomes something. But yeah, I just don't really like where he's at. I think he's going to struggle this year. And I mean, maybe these guys have some career years. Anything can happen, but I'm not really liking what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, that's why he's 14. Power rankings, both of us.
Grades, or you want to do rankings?
Yeah, we can just do the rankings. So I have him at 14 in my power rankings.
I have him as 14 as well. Chris, you have anything different?
I actually have him as 12.
Whoa.
All right.
Okay.
And what
do you see here? What do you see here that you like?
Just to put a little, give a little insight on this. My power rankings are based on projections for this year and depth of team. So
okay.
That's all I'll say.
Okay. You don't want to elaborate on what you do like, what you think is going to get him out of the basement?
I mean, he's like you said, he's got a lot of value right now when you get to those projections. You know, the Jared Kalenics, the Wander Francos, when are they going to get to their ceilings? Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be in year 3? So when is that all going to happen? You can see right now, Wander Franco, if it's going to be year 3, he's already on a B contract. So he's going to be thrown back after that.
All right. I totally forgot about the Wander Franco thing, because it brings me to my, I think, third bold prediction. My third bold prediction is that Wander Franco will have a worse fantasy year than Willy Adames. I think that at the end of the year, Willy Adames will outproduce Wander Franco.
In how many categories?
At least 3.
Because I was going to say, because if we're going from a pure fantasy perspective, there's 6 categories, right? So he's got to at least beat him, and on base is kind of tough when you look at it, right? Because if he beats him by 40 points, that's more substantial than beating him by 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're absolutely crazy.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. It's a bold prediction for a reason. I'm putting my neck on line here. It's very easy to say the not so bold predictions. I like to go bold with mine. I like
That's
to
true.
put my neck out on the line.
You've always had something against Wander Franco for some reason.
I
Though. You've
have.
never...
I have. Yep. I mean, well, I'm not going to get into it. All right. Number 13 in our consensus power rankings. Oh, let me find it. We're going to go with Eddie Mazer. Unfortunately, Eddie's draft did not get him out of the basement next to Chad. Was not a big fan of what Eddie did in the draft. I thought he overpaid for pretty much everybody he got. 20 for Rizzo, 23 for India, 3 for Yastrzemski. I don't think Yastrzemski had any business being drafted in the auction. Guys like Patrick Corbin for 9, who already has a 10 ERA, picking up right where he left off last year. He's getting up 14 hits in 6 2/3 of an inning. And who else did he pick up? Tanner Houck for 5 is okay. That was decent. 29 for Blake Snell, who hasn't pitched an inning, who's already on the IL. So, I mean, some things never change. Yeah, there's just so much I don't like about this team. Eddie had a clear need for pitching going into the draft, and he did not address it with really anybody, any quality starting pitchers before I got to the reserve draft. And the hitting leaves a lot to be desired. Plus, he's already got 2 outfielders on IL, and Buxton and Alvarez. So, yeah, I just... McNeil for 10 as your starting second baseman, not good. And I think that story is not going to live up to $36 either. There's just so much I don't like about this team. There's some decent assets, but just not a lot I like. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. The draft was a little rough. I think 20 for Rizzo was a bit much. Snell for 29 was a lot. I disagree on the India one. I think India for 23 is a fair price. When you look at what he did last year and what he was able to contribute, 10 plus steals, an amazing on base percentage, 20 plus home runs, and he scores 100 runs. I'll take that for that price. It could maybe be a bit of an overpay, but his numbers really aren't super outside of the RBIs. His numbers aren't super far off where Ozzy Albis's are, and he has like a 70-point higher on base percentage than Albie. So, but other than that, no. Not a fan of the draft. His team came in as one of the worst teams. It's coming out as one of the worst teams. He does have some pieces he can move around, but again, the Buxton injury is going to hurt him. That didn't look good, Kyle. Sorry, buddy. And a couple, but I do like some guys on his. Kopech should be a nice value, but I think again, you're already kind of looking towards next year. Not a fan, but Gore and Kopech could be some interesting names moving forward.
Mackenzie Gore, over under 4.5 ERA.
4.5. That's high now. I would say if he pitched, I would say under for sure.
I'll go over.
Okay. 4.5's a lot now. That's a lot.
I don't know if he's ever had a career year under 4.5. All right. So I'm putting that down. You're going under 4.5.
I mean, again, I don't know how long he stays in the rotation either, but I guess, yeah, if he pitches more than 50 innings in the bigs, yeah, I'll say he's definitely under.
All right. My next bold prediction, Byron Buxton only needs 120 games to be a top 10 player. Top 10 fantasy. Let's go top 10 fantasy hitter.
Okay.
If Byron Buxton plays 120 games, so that's basically missing 25% of the year, he will still be a top 10 fantasy hitter. Putting it on the board.
Any update on his most recent injury?
He's going to be out a week.
Okay. That's better. All right, there we go. It's already started.
Probably by the end of that week, he'll still probably be a top 10 player because he's already got 3 home runs.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's producing early.
Yeah, I mean 3 home runs, 5 runs, a stolen base, 308 on base percentage. So I mean, even in a week, if he doesn't play, he's still probably around the
And
top.
that's the thing with Eddie's lineup is it's not awful. I mean, you got guys like Witt coming up, Buxton, Robert, Winker, Alvarez, India. That's a solid core. I mean, that really is a solid core. It's just depending on how well they do, because again, he drafted a lot of these prospects last year, and now they're already on B contracts. And as Chris has kind of pointed out, how long do you wait for a 21-year-old Bobby Witt? Do you pay 13 for him next year? If he wins Rookie of the Year, sure. But if he has his rookie struggles, do you pay 13 for him next year? I don't know.
When does the sophomore slump come in too?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
All right, Chris, where do you have Eddie in the power rankings?
Dead last, 14.
Oh,
oof.
Good. Sorry, Eddie. Sorry, not sorry.
All right.
For 12th, we actually have a 2-way tie. So it's 11th and 12th is tied based on our consensus rankings because Eric and I have these guys flipped in kind of 12 in the 11, 12 range. So we'll go alphabetical, I guess. We'll go Bryce first, just because we had some strong feelings about Bryce's team. So coming in at
Yeah.
12 is the Beantown Boys. Why don't you take the lead on this one, Eric?
Yeah, and because obviously the consensus things kind of has us putting our two rankings together and it gives you a ranking. I actually have Bryce higher than Kyle does. Again, I didn't love the draft, but the thing is he didn't come in with an awful team. So I still like what he's able to do there. Obviously, he had the huge draft overpays. But like Kyle mentioned, I know we make fun of the Cabrian Hayes thing, but again, it's not like Cabrian Hayes is supposed to be a bad third baseman. I know we joke around about it and stuff like that, but he is supposed to be a really good hitter at the major league level. So again, if it's a 1 year guy, fine. But overall, Bryce, I have it 10 because when you look at Xander, when you look at Donaldson, when you look at McMahon, when you look at Votto, you're getting high OBP guys, Merrifield and Grisham to get your steals. Kyle Tucker's kind of one of those all around guys. I like the lineup a lot. Grandal's going to be an OBP machine as well. So I think overall, you're looking at a team that's got a lot going for it, but the pitching staff scares me. I don't think Eduardo Rodriguez is a 1. You got him at a good price, though. Pablo Lopez is probably your best pitcher on your staff. I like him more than Eovaldi and Bassett. Bassett and Eovaldi have kind of had some good years. They've had some bad years, but when they're 33, 32-year-old pitchers, which one are you going to get? So I think the staff could use some work. I know we got DeGrom for 36, but he was one of those teams I don't think could have afforded that. He needed someone that can perform now. DeGrom was, again, more for the Chris's or the Kyles or the guys that could have afforded to stash him. I don't think Bryce can afford to stash a guy that long.
Yeah, I just struggle to see the upside in this team. Really, I don't see what the ceiling is. I mean, his offense is already off to a screechingly slow start. It's the offense just leaves a lot to be desired. He's got Colton Wong, in his utility. He might bring a few stolen bases, maybe a handful of home runs. Not really a whole lot else outside of that. Not really too many glaring holes, I would say, in the offense, but not really any whole lot of name value guys outside of Xander Bogaerts and Kyle Tucker now that are really you can count on to kind of produce at a top 20 hitter level. And I just don't really like a whole lot of what I see. The pitching staff is going to be good. I think it's going to be like a middle of the road pitching staff, but I don't really see a lot of guys here that have like incredibly high upsides either. I mean, Eduardo Rodriguez might strike out a lot. Pablo Lopez, I like. If he gets 170 innings out of Pablo Lopez, it'll look a lot better. If Eduardo Rodriguez figures things out in Detroit, I mean, things could go right for Bryce and his pitching staff. I think this is a team that, like, yeah, if things go right, and a lot of it does go right, Bryce doesn't have a bad team. He could certainly, make a run for it. I don't really like the upside of it. And I just don't think that he could have done so much more in the draft. And it just leaves so much to be desired. And because of what his team could have been and what it ended up becoming, that's why I have him so much lower in my power rankings.
I had Bryce in a tie for 6th right in the league, but that was based on the draft. I think the trade knocked him down a little bit.
Gotcha. That would make sense.
Because you started talking about Eduardo Rodriguez. He did not draft Eduardo Rodriguez nor kept him. That was a Phil Keith,
right,
and then a trade.
Yeah, it would have been Montas.
Yep, and that's the Mont. I actually like Montas. I like him, but you never know, especially after that whole the suspension from a couple of years ago. He looked good last year. Is that going to continue going? But I still think that post-draft, Bryce was in that middle range. Knock him down a few pegs now.
All right. That brings us to our other tied for 11th team, which is going to be, he's not going to be happy, just a blah team. Dave, as we said going into it, had the distinct luxury of not having a good team and not really having a whole lot of money to spend because he kind of tied up his salary with just kind of some blah level players like Arenado for 31. Yeah, Arenado's a good player. He's freaking torching me this week. Yeah, but for like 31, he's not really great value. Altuve is a decent player, but for 18, it's okay. Bell is a decent player, but for 11, it's okay. So it's like, yeah, like the team overall, like isn't bad. It's not a bad team, but like because of the lack of values that he has, he didn't really give himself a whole lot of wiggle room to kind of make his team a lot better. Now, I will say this. I think that Dave's team does have a high ceiling. I mean, he's got two an MVP and MVP runner up because he scooped up Bellinger and he scooped up Yelich. So yeah, I mean, if things go right for those guys and they become MVP level players again, and Altuve scores 120 runs, and Arenado kind of keeps doing what he's doing, and Josh Bell hits 30 home runs, and Blackmon finds the fountain of youth, and then his pitching staff, if Strasburg pitches 160 innings and Scherzer pitches 200 innings and Wainwright does what he did last year and Kyle Gibson somehow finds form, like, yeah, then he might have something. But there's just so much that has to go right in order for this team to be really good. I just think there's too many variables and just too many volatile players on this team for him to actually put it all together and be in the running as one of the top teams at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of his issues too is his on base percentage, which is the same issue he had last year. I know we talked about this kind of at length on the last podcast, but he doesn't really have, when you look at the projections, too many guys ahead of that. What was that magic number? Was it 324 or 327 was the lowest on base percentage out of any of the teams last year on the standings. And he's got a lot of guys projected for under that. I mean, we're talking about Baez. Austin Meadows is not a huge OBP guy. Suarez is not an OBP guy. So I think he's going to struggle there. And I'm not a huge fan of the
324 is the lowest.
Yeah, 324. So when you got that many guys projected under that number, that's not good. That's not good at all, or right around that number. The pitching staff, I'm not a huge fan of. I know Gibson was okay last year. Marquez started off really good, fell apart, but he pitches in Colorado. I know his numbers in Colorado are weirdly good, but Joe Musgrove, Scherzer's probably your top end there. Wainwright's old. Again, does Scherzer and Wainwright hold up? I'm just not a huge fan of the staff. I think the lineup's okay. I did actually like the Yelich and Bellinger for a combined 50 price in the draft. I actually think he did well there. But again, I have him at 12th in my rankings. I think you got him a little bit higher, but overall, one of the bottom tier teams.
Yeah, I think I had him at 10th. Chris?
I had him tied with Bryce.
Okay.
6th.
Okay. 7th. And I think it has to do with that ceiling stuff. You look at a lot of the projections for most of his players, and they got some pretty high stats, RBIs and runs too. I was looking down, and he's got, I think, 4 or 5 players that have 90 RBIs and over 90 runs. So
not enough.
Like,
it's not enough just to have 5 guys that can score 90, especially when you have guys like Adam Frazier, who's probably not going to drive in 60, and Ian Happ, who's probably not going to drive in 60, and Charlie Blackmon, who's I don't think he's going to be in the lineup every day, and who's not going to drive in a lot.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the depth. Like, I mean, look right now, he's got Baez in his reserves, and Baez could be a 90 run RBI guy.
Yeah.
So when you talk about depth, you can interchange those parts and you can still accumulate stats, saying like the road ope stuff. So you play the hot hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also don't think Austin Meadows will drive in 95 if he's platooned too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like that he's got Chapman and Robertson. I think he's got 2 closers. I mean, I don't know if Robertson will save more than 20 games this year, because I mean, even if he pitches well, the Cubs will probably trade him. And we already saw Givens get a trade too. So I don't know if having Robertson is going to be enough for him. Yeah, just I hate to say it, but it's just like, I guess we can't call it blah because it has upside.
A little less than blah though.
Yeah,
based on the rankings.
Sub blah in the rankings.
Chris has him pretty blah. Chris has him right in the middle. We're a little less than that.
Could be some blah supreme if things go right. There's just like I said, there's just so much that has to go right in order for things to work out for Davey. Coming in at number 10 in our consensus rankings is going to be the newbie, Corey. Welcome aboard, Corey. Hello, Corey. Hope you're listening. Corey's team had an interesting draft. He had a little bit of money to spend. Some of us liked the way he spent it. Some of us didn't. Why don't you take the lead on Corey, Eric?
I actually have Corey. Obviously in ours thrown together. You got him. We have him at 10. I have him at 8 in mine. I think he had a pretty good draft. I think he's right around the middle of the league in terms of where he's at. I do think there's things that need help. I think the lineup isn't great. I still think you're lacking maybe that one more star bat. I know you got a Rosarena, Lindor, Abreu, but I still think you're missing one there. But honestly, I think he did a pretty darn good job with his rotation. I know Castillo and McCullers are banged up right now, but when they're on, they're on. Hader, you could argue best closer in the league, especially from a fantasy perspective with the strikeouts he's going to give you. Urias, really good. Rogers, really good. Max Fried last year, pretty good, and he's projected to do well again this year. So I don't know. I think I think his rotation's pretty solid all around. I actually think he's got one of the best ones. Not big names, but one of the better rotations. The lineup I still think is missing one or two bats, and that's why I don't have him too high. But I do think he came in and I think he did pretty well for himself.
Yeah, I kind of compare his team to Bryce's a little bit, but the difference between his team and Bryce's team is he's kind of got like more like name brand proven players in Julio Urias and Trevor Rogers and Max Fried that I just kind of trust more than I trust the guys that are on Bryce's staff. So I kind of like where he kind of started there. Then, hopefully mid-year he's going to add Castillo, and maybe the end of the year he can add McCullers for kind of a late playoff push. McCullers is already, I think, throwing off flat ground. So I hope that, for his sake that he can kind of get those guys. But yeah, I mean, if it rounds out and his rotation ends up being Urias, Rogers, Fried, Castillo, McCullers,
That's
and then
good.
he's got Hader coming out of the bullpen, that's going to be a top rotation if it can stay healthy. He's going to need a little bit more with the offense. These stolen bases might be a little lacking, but maybe he's going to get a bunch of guys that are going to chip in, like Moncada and Lowe and Garcia and some of those guys that maybe just kind of chips away little by little here instead of having the big stolen base guys. Lindor has kind of carried his offense to start. But yeah, I think that he needs a little bit more pop somewhere. Maybe one other guy or two. I don't know how he's going to get it. But yeah, I think it's a decent team. I thought he did an okay job. I think the reserve draft, he kind of came up a little bit short. He didn't really get a lot of guys that are going to help him in the reserve draft. And hopefully he can kind of turn a few pieces into something, and we'll see how it goes for him.
I've got Corey at 8th.
All right.
8th. So middle of the pack. So below Bryce and below Dave.
Below Bryce and below Dave.
I got him at 8 too. You're a little lower on him. You got him at 11. So we got him
Yeah.
at 10 overall.
Yeah, just the offense leaves a little bit to be desired. And I mean, he's still got his offense or his pitching has upside, but it's got to get healthy first. And then it's got to get healthy and it's got to look good. So we'll see how it kind of all comes together.
Ooh, this next one. This next one, is this our biggest differential?
This is our biggest differentiator.
There's one more that's actually tied. There is one more that's tied for 5 spots.
Okay.
I do see it on there, but this is one of our biggest differences.
I thought the biggest winner in the draft and the biggest riser from the draft is going to be Team T-Pain, Tyler's team. I liked what he did in the draft. I thought he filled some holes. I think that his pitching staff kind of took a little bit more of a leap just because of what he did in the reserve draft. I think if he gets quality innings from some of the guys that he took way late in Quantrill and McGill and Minaya and Gray, I think that trade is really going to help him. I think the pitching staff is going to be decent. I don't think it's going to be top, but I think this is just more of like a middle of the pack team. I think it'll be like a 7th or 8th pitching staff. It'll be like a 7th or 8th offense. I think it'll be good. I think there's some names here. I think he's going to compete in most categories. He's got speed in Mondesi and Pena and Marte. He's got some pop with Pete Alonso, with Corey Seager, with Suzuki, with Voit. And I just think that the pitching staff, he might lead the league in saves if he's got Romano and Gallegos, who Romano's already freaking killing it. Then he just kind of needs some of those rotation guys just to have good years. I mean, Sonny Gray to just have a typical Sonny Gray year. Quantrill, McGill to kind of keep doing what they've been doing for the last half year or so. I just kind of like what he has here. I don't love it, but I do like it. And I think that he did pretty well in the draft. So I kind of raised him up quite a bit.
I have him pretty low in my rankings. I have him overall at 11. I think Tyler really came into the draft needing to do something different. I don't like the rotation at all. I mean, what guy can you point to there that's an ace or even like a number 2? Maybe Minaya. I mean,
Yeah.
Minaya finally got it together last year. Sonny Gray's 32, and who knows what he's gonna bring out there. I mean, Tyler McGill, I know you said you're high on him, which is fine. I mean, he's a young guy, but he had over a 4.5 ERA last year. I mean, I'd take Mackenzie Gore over him. So
I'll put that on the board.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you like about this? The rotation's awful. So then you spend money on the closers, Gallegos and Romano, and then you got Barlow with saves. Cool, dude. You're going to win the saves category, and you got some depth with Savali and Mize. I like Mize, okay? But I just don't see a number 1 or a number 2 really in this whole entire rotation. I just don't. And that's not good. The lineup's decent. Muncy Alonso going to hit some home runs. I like Seager, Gallo, Marte, Suzuki. The lineup's there, but again, why spend so much money on closers when you got Owen Miller as your utility right now? Luke Voigt, Dylan
I think
Carlson.
Mondesi should probably be his utility.
Right. And it's just one of those things where it's like, why? I don't know. I just think his draft was misdirected. We're way different on it, but I don't think that rotation stacks up at all in this league. I just don't think it will.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said. I think that I think maybe his closers carry him more. If their closers kind of keep those ratios, Gallegos is a very good guy, very quality reliever when it comes to strikeouts, innings, ERA, WHIP, all that kind of stuff. And then I don't really know what Romano is going to do when it comes to ERA and WHIP, but it's looking like he's going to have 40 to 45 save opportunities. One of my bold takes here is that Romano is going to lead the league in saves.
Oh, wow.
But wait for it. And blown saves.
Oh.
So that's gonna be my little bold twist. Is Romano not only leads the league in saves, but he also leads the league in blown saves. Not really sure who else in that Toronto bullpen is going to be worth, but I think he might get like 50 to 60 save opportunities, which means he's going to save a bunch of games. He might blow a lot of games, and we'll kind of see if he can keep the roll all year. But man, if he keeps the roll all year, man, he could have well over 40 saves this year, and it could be a really good thing for him. And I mean, if he's going to get 14 points in the save category, then he just has to be mediocre in all the other ones to have like a top 8 pitching staff. And then hopefully his offense can kind of carry him. It's not going to be an offense in the tier of Phil and Chris and some of the other guys that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just, like I said, I think it's just going to be a decent team. I think he'll be in the running maybe for a wild card spot, but we'll see. Chris, what do you see?
I got Tyler 10th. And he is the second biggest faller, in my opinion, from pre-draft to post-draft.
Oh, wow. All right.
All right. We're going to go next, number 8 in our power rankings, to a team that had the world in his hands, that we loved going back to last year, a team that we predicted to win it all, then loved his team in the offseason, but he decided to trade some of those guys away pre-draft, go into the draft with $12 and nothing to do in the draft. And we did not like how it turned out. And that is the battling swashbucklers, Jay Snyder. Eric, why don't you go ahead and take Jay's team?
I mean, it's tough because obviously we liked his team going in, right? I mean, the pre-draft rankings had him, I think I had him as like, I had him a 7. So I had him right in the middle of the league. But when you go in with $17, it's hard to do anything. So it's really hard to even look at his draft and say, oh, he did good or bad, because again, he only had $17. So again, he's going to rely on what he did last year. He's going to rely on $1 cheap players that worked out for him last year. He's already got 4 $1 players in his lineup. Okay. Mm-hmm. 2 of them, I think 2 or 3 of them were from last year as holdovers. Yeah. But I mean, it just goes to show what he's working with. I don't love the lineup. I think Haniger, Reynolds, Stanton, and Freeman are really solid. Again, the trade with Rio Milito does me wrong because of how much he took on salary there. I just think you take it back to that trade, and he could have went into the draft with about $50, and he could have gotten 1 more star or a couple more pitchers. And I think that trade really handcuffed him. So I got him right in the middle, a little bit less than the middle of the league at 9. I don't think his team's bad. I mean, we knew it was coming in with pretty good holdovers, but with $17, it's hard to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because, I mean, a lot of teams address their needs. We're kind of getting to the point where it's kind of tough to differentiate which teams we kind of like, which ones we don't, and kind of some overlap, and kind of until we start to see it all on paper after a month and see kind of how these teams are shaking out, it's going to be tough to see. I like his pitching staff. I kind of like what he did. I mean, I've mentioned before, I thought that Patrick Sandoval for $3 was a huge bargain. He's just a guy that I like. He's got 2 closers in Jansen and Soto that we pretty confident have the job. He's going to have hopefully Giolito back in a few weeks. And then he's going to go Garrett Cole, Giolito, Aaron Nola, Patrick Sandoval, Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb and Alex Wood are basically like the same pitcher, I think, when it comes to what they can do this year. Alex Cobb's already putting up really good strikeout numbers this year, and hopefully he can kind of be a good thing for him. 5 innings, 10 strikeouts in his first start. So, I mean, he could have one of the best pitching staffs in the league. And then he's kind of got Duvall, Art Warren, who might also be closers as maybe some trade bait here. Bundy, I'm not too high on, but as his like 7th pitcher, you don't really need to be, that high on him. John Gray, when he gets back from injury, could also be something. So maybe he makes a trade or 2, trades away from his pitching, adds to some of his hitting, but I don't really get the whole Josh Lowe hype. I mean, I don't really understand what Josh Lowe does. I don't think he's going to hit 20 home runs. I don't think he's going to steal 20 bases. I don't really understand why people are so high on him, but I just more of a lack of understanding on my part. Do you know anything about Josh Lowe, Eric, that I don't?
I couldn't even know. I do not.
Yeah.
I'm pretty well versed on prospects, but no, I have no idea.
Yeah, and people are just like kind of like raving about him. I'm like, I don't really get it. Frank Schwindel, my next bold take is that Frank Schwindel is not going to be the starting first baseman for the Chicago Cubs in December. I think he's going to be more of a flash in the pan kind of guy. And if he does play well, I think he's probably either traded into a platoon role somewhere. But I just don't see Schwindel being like a 30, 35 home run guy with a 380 on base percentage and for the entire year. I just think that either he gets traded into a platoon or he just gets outplayed by somebody else and just the league catches up to him. Duvall's going to bring down his on base percentage. Chapman's going to bring down his on base percentage. Polanco's not really a big on base percentage guy. Oh, and I have another bold take. And Eric and I actually kind of see eye to eye on this. Eric, why don't you give your bold take about Frederick Friedman, and then I'll give mine.
Basically mine is I know he's in the Dodgers lineup and this might be crazy, but I guess that's why they're bold takes. I think Matt Olson has a better year than Freddie Freeman. I think Matt Olson going to Atlanta is going to be a paradise for him. I mean, think of what numbers he put up in Oakland last year. And granted, that wasn't a bad team. That he actually did have good players surrounding him. But I can only imagine when Acuna gets in that lineup, Olson's younger than Freeman. You could argue at this point in his career, maybe a little bit better than Freeman. I know Freeman's an amazing hitter. That's not taking away from him at all. But what Olson is capable of doing is going to be staggering. And I think in that Atlanta lineup, I'll go on a prediction that Olson has a better year than Freddie Freeman.
My bold take is that Freddie Freeman does not hit 30 home runs, which actually isn't bold. The more you kind of look into it, my thing is that I just think that playing in LA, there's just the expectations are going to be so high that he's going to kind of struggle. He doesn't have a home run yet. He's going to struggle to live up to those expectations. But if you actually look into his numbers, the number of times he's actually hit 30 home runs, he actually hit 21 in 2011, 23, 23, 18, 18, 2016, he had 34. Then he went 28, 23 in 2018.
I mean, you could argue Rizzo was actually having a better career up until about 2018. You really could. Yeah.
You certainly could. And then in 2019, he had 38. In 2021, he had 600 at bats last year. He only had 31 homers last year. So, I mean, in order for him to hit 30 home runs, he's got to basically have a full season of health, which for first baseman typically stay healthy. But I think he's one IL stint away from hitting 25 home runs this year. So yeah. I mean, yeah, he's going to home run. The RBIs and runs are going to be there. Maybe he'll steal 5 to 10 bases. I mean, he'll be fine, but yeah, I'm not as high
for $40 though. It's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, $40 is a lot. I think he'll be worth it, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be MVP caliber that some people are expecting him. So, I mean, lineup's going to be decent. Pitching staff looks good, could be good. Certainly top heavy if it stays healthy. I'm not a big Garrett Cole fan, but that's kind of, you can't really argue a whole lot about it. Jay's team is good, but I just don't think it's great. I think he could have done a whole lot more. And I don't like some of the trades he made in the offseason. Chris, what do you see?
I actually have Jay 5th.
Okay.
And the reason being is I could see him leading in 6 categories. 6 categories being runs, home runs, RBIs, ERA, WHIP, and Ks.
Those are 6 big ones. Those are some big ones too. Wow.
Those are the sexy ones too.
Yeah, they are.
Look at his projections for Ks. How many are over 200? You have Cole, Nola, and Giolito all over 220 Ks.
Yep.
Yeah, that's substantial too.
I mean, if Patrick Sandoval throws 180 innings, I think he'll get there too.
And if you can lead in at least 5 categories, you're going to be golden for Roto.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of points.
And my biggest thing too is like if you can lead in at least 4 Roto categories, I think that also puts you pretty darn good in head-to-head as well, because you can go up against the big players that maybe only can lead 1 or 2 categories in Roto. And then after that, it's just, even up.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We have another big draft riser. And that draft riser, a team that many are probably surprised they haven't talked about yet. Angels in the Trout Field. Justin, kind of making some moves, had a good, pretty good, decent draft, filled a couple holes. Kind of liked what he did. I'm really liking the way that Justin's offense is kind of rounded out. He's got some stolen bases and Mookie Betts and Chisholm. He's going to get some guys to chip in here and there. He got some really good values. When your utility guys are Crawford and Candelario, two guys that are just going to probably get 90 runs, 90 RBIs each, probably for both of them, potentially. Maybe not in the runs category, but I think in the RBIs category, both of them will probably touch 90 RBIs in each. It's top heavy. It's got Mookie Betts. It's got Goldschmidt. It's got Bregman, Ozuna, and guys that can hit 35 home runs. And it's kind of pretty well rounded out. Don't love the pitching staff. I mean, it starts with Shane Bieber, and he's got some guys that we like that he picked up in the draft. If Lance Lynn can come back sooner rather than later, to go Shane Bieber, then Lance Lynn, then Disclafani, Ranger Suarez. It's guys that I like. Whenever you got a top tier closer in Iglesias, it always kind of brings up your ceiling and your floor to your pitching staff. He's going to need to find one, probably two more pitchers if he wants to be taken seriously, if he wants to really be relevant at the end of the year. But I think that his offense is going to be quality, and I think that he's going to kind of make a run for it. I don't know if he's kind of a league contender, I would say, but I think that he did a good job addressing some of the needs that he had. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I think he did a really good job in the draft. I actually had him moving up the most pre-draft and post-draft in the rankings. I think I had him going all the way from 12th pre-draft to 7th. And like I said, those top 5-6 spots I had in our last show, it's going to be kind of hard to wiggle around in there, but he moved up a lot from the back of the pack to the front. I like his offense. Cronenworth, Bregman, Chisholm, Goldschmidt, Mookie, Ozuna, Crawford. Again, I can't believe I'm saying his name in regards to offense, but Brandon Crawford did it last year. So, I mean, you got to take it where it is. I like the offense. I think it's good. I think having
score a lot of runs.
Yeah. And I like Pollock. I've always been a huge Pollock fan, University of Notre Dame grad, and you could argue, again, had the best year of his career last year. So I'm excited for what Justin's team can do offensively. And I think he did a good job in the draft getting pitching, but I do wish he would have gotten one of those aces. I wish he would have spent the money on a Manoah. I wish he would have spent the money on a Rogers, because I think that would have made it look a little bit better. I think we have a lot.
Had the money, and I think he spent it on Lance Lynn.
Yeah, and that's where it's tough. And I don't hate Lynn, because again, I think even if he misses the first couple months at $24, if he pitches like he pitches, he's probably a keeper next year. But again, Trevor Rogers right now or Lance Lynn 2 months from now, I think he looks a lot better with just one more solid pitcher in his pitching staff. And I think he's going to be competitive. But again, how long? Suarez is the big one for me. Suarez, if he can really truly pitch like he did last year out of that rotation, that's huge. But that's the big one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's going to need some guys to take some leaps. He's going to need Gonsolin to stay in the rotation. He's going to need to get some quality innings from Rasmussen, Joe Ryan. But yeah, he needs. I like a Carlos Rodon would have been like perfect for him, even if it was only for like 150 innings, just like an upside ceiling kind of player.
Just one more guy.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the ceilings are for some of the guys that he has here, that I think the rotation might come up short. But if you talk to him, I know he's confident in his scouting eye on pitching, and he's confident he's going to find them throughout the year and scoop those guys up on the waiver wire and kind of find those impact pitchers, kind of like he did with, I know he had Luis Garcia last year for a little bit and some of the other guys that he had. So I think he's probably feeling pretty good. I was frustrated with his offense early and playing the juggernaut that is Tyler in the first week. Tyler, I know, wanted to come on here and talk about gloat how he's number one in the rankings, and he's kicking Justin's ass in head-to-head.
How about it?
Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to do that. Where do you have Justin's team there, Chris?
I got Justin ninth. A little bit lower. And it's the pitching, not sold on it, but I could still see Lance Lynn pitching 200 innings this year, even missing 2 months, because he's just a workhorse. No homerism on that one either.
Wasn't Lance Lynn, didn't they like not let him pitch through the 6th inning a bunch last year though?
Yeah, and he
kept
basically
taking him out in like the 5th, 6th.
Oh yeah. And he would curse out La Russa too every time he wanted to come out. So
all right, moving on to number, what are we at? We're at number 6 in our power rankings. We're gonna go to a team very polarizing, which is Peter's team. And in Peter's team, the Pistol Pete's platoon, some interesting draft decisions. The biggest thing with Peter that I haven't got to criticize him yet for is Peter's making like the same mistake that he made last year. And it's kind of,
oh man.
But did you notice that too, Eric?
Yeah.
You look at Peter's team and it's like, yeah, it's a decent team, but then he went the prospect route again, and he doesn't have a single bench bat again.
And
you're a bench.
And I told him that because he obviously asked, we talk a little bit after the draft. I'm like, dude, like your depth again, like last year, is an issue. Like it is. And I'll tell you this. I think he had a really good, solid beginning of the draft. I do. I think Tyler O'Neill at that price was good. Rodriguez, again, we could argue that price, right? I thought it was a little high, but I don't think it's like awful, awful. McClanahan at 26. I think Glaber at 5. We'll see the playing time. But Verlander at 26. I think he did fine drafting wise. But what is up with his reserves? And I don't, and he talked about the potential and how they could be closers one day. Okay.
Cool.
But yeah, I just don't get it. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that 5 relievers on your bench and none of them are closers?
Yes.
And that's something that we didn't really talk about earlier when we were talking about drafts. We haven't mentioned Peter too much yet, but I mean, and he had Kimbrel, which he's lucky that he turned into a closer, right? But we're talking he has 5 reserves on his bench that he wasted A contracts on, or one of them's a C or a B. And we're talking no depth at all. If he has any injury, he's got to start releasing guys. So I don't know where Peter's head was at in terms of his reserves, but I liked the beginning of the draft, and he kind of completely screwed it at the end.
I mean, he's actually really only has one closer, right? He's got
Yeah.
Kimbrel, that's about it.
Yep.
I mean, technically Melanson's the closer, but you don't really want like Melanson's not good. B, he's on a bad team that's not going to win a lot of games. So yeah, I don't really like the whole reliever situation. I don't get why he's valuing guys like Spencer Strider and Blake Trinan and Jake Diekman
I don't get it at all.
over some offensive guys, especially when it's like you got Oscar Mercado in your outfield right now.
I mean, already look at his period 3 roster. He's Patino's out. Okay, so what does he do?
Yeah,
I mean, already.
I mean, Luzardo's I was going to slide into there.
Right.
If you ask Peter, though, Peter will tell you that he has the number 1 rotation in the entire league. What do you make of that?
That's just a farce. There's no way. I will say this though. Dylan Cease is going to be one of the best values at $10 if he holds it together. And one of my bold predictions that I had is the Kopech Cease combination and for the South Side. I hate to say it, but and I don't want to do the whole Wood Pryor thing, but it's going to be that type of level. I mean, Kopech and Cease are going to be. I think we're going to say that they're both top 10 to 20 pitchers next year. Both of them. I mean, they're that good, man. They strike guys out. Kopech looks nasty. They just took a little bit of time getting him in the rotation. Cease was disgusting last year on a strikeout level. If he gets that ERA to a 1, even a 3.5, and if he gets 200 innings on those strikeouts, you're looking at 260, 270 strikeouts from Cease. And are you not looking about 260, 270 strikeouts from Kopech on 200 innings? I mean, that rotation is going to be
200 innings with Michael Kopech. You can't.
But why not? He's never started
in the same sentence.
But why not? I mean, okay, so if he throws 165 like Cease did last year, Kopech's hitting 200 Ks, easy. I'll put money on that, easy. He hits. So you're looking at Cease and Kopech. I think next year we're going to start seeing them on magazines. The two of them on like it's going to be nasty. I hate to say it. I'm a Cubs fan. I don't like saying nice things about the Sox, but that top end of that rotation with their ages, I would be drooling if I'm a White Sox fan right now.
I don't want to make this comp because it's not the direction that I think it's going to go. But is Dylan Cease like pre-2021 Robbie Ray? Where he's just going to strike out a bunch of players. He's going to light up the radar gun and he's going to have a 4 ERA and a 1.3 whip. I mean, like that's what he did last year. Yeah, he struck out 226, 165 innings. Great. But he also had a 3.9 ERA and a 1.25 whip. Like that, those numbers aren't helping your team. Like, yes, the strikeouts certainly are, but the ERA and whip are actually actively hurting your team. So, I mean, that you call him like you don't want to put him in like the area of like, oh, he's like an ace level caliber. If you look at the strikeouts, well, yeah, he's an ace that's helping you in 2 categories: wins, quality starts, and his strikeouts. But he's actually hurting you in ERA and whip. So I mean, like, yeah, we can play the game. Well, if he gets his ERA and whip down, but yeah, if he gets his ERA and whip down, we can say that about every pitcher. If he shaves off his a point off his ERA and a couple degrees off his whip, then yeah, he's going to be great. We can say about anybody. He's got nasty stuff. He's going to be good, certainly, but.
You're looking at 270 Ks on 200 innings, man.
Yeah, he certainly could.
And I don't remember a world where a 3.9 ERA became awful. I'll be honest. I don't remember when that. I'm not saying it's ace.
It's not helping your team.
But when you're in the American League, if you're on the verge of even a mid 3.4, 3.5 ERA as a starter, I would say that's pretty damn solid.
But hey, maybe he is the next Robbie Ray, who is
Who
just
knows?
gonna be for 3 years. He's going to be a strikeout guy and not a whole lot else. And then all of a sudden, he's going to
We'll
flip
see.
the switch and be an ace level player. Go
But
ahead.
with Cease and Burns at the top, Cease and Burns at the top of that rotation, that's going to be strikeout heaven. So Verlander, if he goes, like I said, I like Peter's team. That's why we have him where we have him. But I'm just like so confused on the execution of it.
What are you gonna say, Chris?
My bold prediction: Cease touches 275 Ks.
All right.
Gotta throw the innings.
And I will throw this into the scenario. Last year, through our league, our average ERA was 3.83. So if you're looking at Dylan Cease at 3.9, that is just an average ERA. It's not technically going to drag you down as much as you think, but shit.
Yeah.
That average was brought down by a few teams, though. So, I mean, I guess
Yes,
3.91 would have been like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the eighth best. If your whole team had a 3.8 or 9.1 or whatever is 3.91, whatever it was. So, I mean, it's average, I guess. But I mean, if you want to be considered, if you want to be a contender, it's not good enough. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. Chad had a 4.3 ERA last year.
Yeah, but for what it's worth, I have Pete ranked 13th.
Oh,
what? All right. It's by those damn relievers. I'm telling you.
Because
how did that happen?
Because of the depth. Because he has no one to replace. If one, like we said, like you guys were saying earlier with his hitting, one of those guys goes down, and he has to replace them with Brennan Davis, who isn't even in the bid.
I don't see the path for Brennan Davis. Now that we have Suzuki and Frazier and all those guys, I don't really see the path on how he becomes a everyday player in 2020.
Oh, June or July, Hayward's not going to play every day.
And I was going to ask you guys earlier, but maybe ponder this for the next podcast. Who is the first keeper that gets dropped outright this year? Who is the first B contract that gets dropped outright?
Oh, a B contract. That's a good call. Yeah.
And I think you can look at this roster right here and say, in order to get something back in return, it might be a drop of one of these guys, like a Gavin Lux.
Yeah.
If something happens, like it, God forsake, if someone like Eloy Jimenez runs into the left field wall again and tears a pec, what's it going to take in order to replace that production? And you're going to have to start dropping either your relievers or someone on your active roster in order to make up that.
Certainly. And I don't really see the assets here that people are clamoring to trade for. And of course, negotiating with Peter is impossible because he wants a power bat for Luis Patino, who's on 60-day IL. Yeah, go ahead and give me a Jared Walsh type player, or, Mike Trout, or I offered him Nelson Cruz, I offered him Nelson Cruz for Kimbrel in the offseason. Which, hey, if you don't like Nelson Cruz, you don't like Nelson Cruz, that's fine. I was like, okay, that's a power bat. And he's like, no. Like, well, okay, how much better of a power bat are you going to get than Nelson Cruz? Because that's what he wanted for Kimbrel. I'm like, well, so you're gonna ask for like a Bregman type player on a better contract? Like, people aren't going to give that up for a closer.
No.
All right, let's go to number 5, which is a team that we also disagree with. Is this our biggest gap too? Is this a 5 gap for us?
Yeah, this was a 5 gapper for us as well. Yeah.
You have him 2nd in your power rankings, which means I have him 7th. And that's Crimmy Charles. Crim's crew. Hope he's enjoying the Jays game. I hope Alek Manoah gets lit up today so that Crimmy can watch it in front of his own eyes and cry a sad, sad song. What do you like about Crimmy's team, Eric? Because you're just so high on it.
I think he did the best job of filling out a rotation for teams that needed to. I mean, I really do.
I disagree.
You're looking at, again, with the names that were going into the draft, you're looking at him getting Alex Wood for 15, and we've already talked about him. Alek Manoah at 30, who could very easily be an ace this year. I mean, he didn't pitch a small sample size last year, guys. He pitched 100+ innings and was pretty elite. Clayton Kershaw.
No, you mean the ace on the Blue Jays?
Yeah, well, I would say Barrios.
Over even your guy.
Well, that's what Gosman. I mean, Manoa. I use that word ace too loosely. I'm sorry. Gosman and Brios are the ace, but I think Manoa is going to be putting up number one type numbers. I should say.
Oh God, I keep forgetting Robbie Ray. He's on Seattle now.
Yeah, he's on
I
Seattle.
totally
Yeah,
forgot about it. He was on
but
Seattle.
but I mean, Clayton Kershaw at 24. Again, we keep talking about this innings thing, but 120 innings, 140 strikeouts last year, 3.5 ERA. I mean, he filled out his pitching plenty fine. And then he got Gurriel for 16. I think he did fine in the draft. And again, he came in. I had him ranked pre-draft at 3, and I got him at 2 right now. So there wasn't like a whole lot of wiggle room here. I think he did a fine draft, and I think he came in with one of the most stacked rosters. I mean, we're looking at this team last year that kept so many guys at such cheap prices. I don't really know what's all that wrong. Like, tell me, he's got Chris Sale waiting in the wings. He's got Noah Syndergaard looking like Noah Syndergaard so far early. He's got Acuna waiting in the wings. I mean, this team is from top to bottom really, really good.
Tell me the one single pitcher on Crim's team that's going to throw 180 innings.
There's not many pitchers at all this year that are going to throw 180 innings.
And I didn't say 200. I didn't say 200. I said 180.
I still
That's
don't
not
think
a high bar.
I think it is this year. I really do. I think with pitchers getting pulled these first 3 starts, 4 or 5 innings in, you're looking at 2 to 3 innings every start. You're looking at 9, 12. I mean, I don't think there's many pitchers that hit 180 this year, dude. I really don't at all. I think 160.
I'll lower the bar to 165.
165. Okay, Manoa, and dare I say it? I'll say Odorizzi, and I'll say Syndergaard.
I guess if you look at it like that, because I worry about the ramp up of all these young guys that have never thrown 200 innings before. I guess if you're looking at it, because guys aren't going to go from throwing 140 innings. How many did Manoa throw last year?
111.
111. So, I mean, obviously he's not going to go from 111 to 180. But if you're thinking that that pitchers aren't going to throw 180, I think that Walker Buehler is going to throw 200. I think that all the top level guys are still going to throw 200.
If the Dodgers are 30 games up in the division, he's not throwing 200 innings, dude. If they have a 10-15 game in the division lead in September, they're throwing him out there for 3-4 inning starts.
The division's still decent. I mean, the Giants are still going to.
Oh, sure, I get that, but I mean, with the Dodgers and what they're supposed to be, if they have 110 wins with 20 games left, I mean, let's just pretend, is Buehler going out there throwing 7-8 inning starts?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they have a 10-game lead with 2
they might.
Then yeah, but I don't think they're on paper they are. But I mean, we could have said that last year about them and the Giants too. And
yeah. And Greinke's an innings machine too. He's not going to get you Ks at all. But I mean, if he throws out his ERA that he did, tell me, what do you dislike about Crim's team? Because Sale last year when he came back was amazing.
I don't like that Greinke is 38, that Kershaw is 34, and Kershaw didn't go through his normal offseason program. I think Manoa is not going to throw the innings that you think he is, because I just don't think that he can be a workhorse. Not Alex Wood, who just hasn't been healthy in 7 years, fully healthy. Syndergaard, I don't expect to pitch a whole season. Odorizzi, you hope that he doesn't pitch a whole season because his ERA and WHIP aren't very good. Chris Sale, who's already hurt. With a random injury, couldn't even tell you what it was. He's on the 60-day IL for rib injury. T1 Walker, not the best. So it's just like, I just don't think that he has the length from some of these guys. I mean, yeah, certainly if all goes right and everything is sunshine and roses and he gets peak seasons from all these veteran pitchers that he has, like Kershaw and Greinke and Syndergaard and all these guys, and what they're capable of, and they don't have any innings restrictions, then yeah, sure. But I just don't think that's the case. I just think that these guys aren't I just don't think they're going to be 170 inning guys that he needs them to be. And I just think that he's not going to length that on that he thinks he is. But maybe it's not going to matter if nobody is, but.
And I'll tell you what, I don't think you can find really much of a hole in that lineup either. Maybe runs scored a little bit, but I mean, you're talking pretty high OBP guys. You're talking a few. I mean, again, this is considering Acuna's coming back in a week or two. Trout, Nimmo, Castellanos, Correa, Riley, I mean, I think the lineup's pretty stacked.
Yeah. I mean, Andres Jimenez is a second baseman. Again, I don't want him anywhere near my lineup.
Gotta find steal somewhere.
Lourdes Gurriel is okay, but he's not great. Nimmo, we'll see if he continues doing what he's doing. Hosmer, I already said my piece about Hosmer. He's just not that good anymore. He's never really been all that good. I guess he's gonna play every day, but I mean, the Padres didn't even want him. So I mean, he's just not that good of a player anymore. You hope that Spencer Torkelson is going to have a breakout year, but you could also see Spencer Torkelson not being on the roster in 2 months if things kind of go poorly and he needs to have the Jared Kalenic treatment. We'll see. I think there's a lot that could go wrong.
I think Torkelson wins Rookie of the Year.
I just think there's a lot that could go wrong here, and I just don't really like the floor of what this team could be. What are you thinking, Chris?
Yeah, I got him 2. Kyle's got him 7. I'm curious on this one. Where's Chris got him?
I have him 4th.
All right.
I have him 4th. And I think looking at my projections, he could be top 5 in 6 categories.
Okay. So he's pretty well rounded then.
I have him runs, home runs, RBI, on base, and whip, and win quality starts.
Yeah, I mean, I like his team. And then again, you have a little bit of the depth, which Chris has been talking about. Mikolas is going to get innings. Matt Manning, when Walker and Sale come back. I mean, it's not like he doesn't have guys that can replace him. And I'm still a believer in Chris Sale. I don't care what anyone says. Even when he did pitch last year, it's not like his numbers were bad.
Man, you are just jumping on the Sox.
I am. As long as he's not cutting up jerseys. I mean, as long as he's not doing that.
All right. So he was our number 5, which brings us to our number 4, which we actually disagree on this one quite a bit too. Number 4 is going to be Phil's team, Special K. Who wants to take this one, me or you?
I can start with it. Obviously the draft's a little different because of the trade, right? So it's kind of hard to look at his draft, but if we just look at his team, he obviously had a whole rotation to fill. And I don't know. I'm curious, what if we're comparing people who had whole rotations to fill and the guys that are right next to each other in the power rankings, how do you like Phil's filling out of his rotation better than Krimmy's? I mean, we talked about the Rodon concern. Sure, if he throws what he did last year, fine. But Luis Garcia love the potential, but a complete. We'll see. We'll see. Great last year, but Carrasco at 11, I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, he finally could pitch last year. If we're talking about guys that haven't pitched at all in years, I mean, I'm looking at his rotation and I'm just sitting there like, there's nothing there that scares me. And in fact, Rodon is you tell me Rodon's your ace, your fantasy number 1 ace? I think Krimmy did a much better job of filling out his rotation than Phil did personally. Now, the thing Phil does have is we knew going in he had that stacked lineup, and we've already talked about that at length. His lineup is nasty. It is stacked. It's big. It's going to produce. I think I talked on the show when we did the projections last time, how many categories he could sit there and win, at least from my numbers. But the rotation, I'll be honest, I think he didn't do a good job filling it out. I really don't. If we're talking about inning guys, Rodon might not hit 150 innings. Who's your number 2? Garcia, 22-year-old Garcia. Montas, who finally, again, look at Montas's numbers. Pretty much 2 good years in his career.
But again, Montas wasn't a draft pick. He was a trade.
He was. And last year was the first time ever Montas pitched more than 100 innings. Ever.
That's because he got busted for PEDs.
Yeah. I'm just saying, ever he's pitched more than 100 innings. So I'm not like, there's nothing I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, to fill out an entire rotation in that draft was tough, but I don't love it. He's got Green and Garcia.
Montas and a guy like Manoah is that Montas actually threw 187 innings last year. So yeah, you could say, oh, he's only threw 100 innings once. Yeah, but he threw 96 one year, but then he threw 187 last year, which means that there's no restrictions on him. They're not going to shut him down after 106, 170. He threw 187 last year. He could be one of the 10 guys that actually throws 200 innings this year.
Come trade deadline, come July time, he might be getting those 3-4 inning starts because they don't want him getting hurt.
Yep.
Potentially. No, I think the rotation is decent. I don't think it's a top rotation. Certainly there's no ace here, but here's the thing is like, I think that Carlos Carrasco is good. I don't think that he's bad. I think that he's decent. I don't think he's worth $11, but I think that he's fine. He was the best available at the time when he had the money to spend. Carlos Rodon, I think if he puts up the numbers they did last year, he's an ace. For the innings that he'll pitch, he is an ace. You can't argue with his production of what he had last year. So you go Carlos Rodon, then you go Frankie Montas as the 2, He's good. He's solid. He's going to go deep into games. He's going to have solid ERA, whip, strikeouts. Then you go, Luis Garcia is your 3, Carlos Carrasco is your 4. And then
Carrasco, oh man, Carrasco had a 6 ERA last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just confused.
Wait, no. Oh, yeah, but in 2020.
I mean, and look at his innings pitched, man.
2.91 ERA the year before that.
But look at his innings pitched. I mean, you're telling me you're that confident in him as your 3 or 4? Like, I just don't see it. I mean, I don't know.
So here's the thing: is that his pitching doesn't have to be great. His pitching can be
right.
good.
Exactly. Yes.
His pitching can be good, and his offense is just loaded.
100%.
He is the best offense in the league, and it's not even close. I think he'll lead the league in home runs and stolen bases.
And remember in that last podcast we did when we looked at those numbers and we talked about him possibly being able to lead like 5 to 6 of, and that's why I'm curious when Chris jumps in to see like what those projections say, because I mean, he could very well have led 5 to almost 6. I mean, he could have stolen bases. He, like you said, he could have runs. He could easily have home runs. I mean, you're right. So in terms of pitching, as long as he just points on a couple more than half average on pitching, he's going to be fine. So 100% agreed there.
So here's the thing is that his offense is loaded. He's got the number 1 offense in the league. I don't think it's an argument early. He just needs his pitching to be halfway decent. And you're sitting here, you're like, oh, who's his ace? Who's his ace? Well, take a look. Trevor Bauer is sitting right here.
Oh no, don't do that.
What do you mean don't do that? He's number 2 in my power rankings, because if Trevor Bauer comes back, it's over. That's
a huge if. Ask the other guy here. Ask Chris.
If Trevor Bauer becomes his 1, then it's Bauer's your 1. It's Rodon is your 2. It's Malley is your 3. Garcia is your 4. Carrasco is your 5. Or Montas. Sorry, I missed Montas. It is Bauer's your 1. Rodon is your 2, Montas is your 3, Garcia is your 4, Malley is your 5, Carrasco is your bench pitcher, and Hunter Green, Luis Garcia, all kind of rotating in matchups. It's over. Then he's got the closer, Taylor Rogers for San Diego, and maybe Joe Barlow becomes a closer in Texas, and he's done. His team has everything, and it's over for the rest of us. He's gonna make trades. He's gonna.
We know that.
He's got O'Neal Cruz as the trade bait, and so like. He can trade O'Neal Cruz for a pitcher. I mean, I think this is probably like, it's not right now on paper the best team based on my power rankings. I have him number 2, but it could be, and it's the number 1 offense. And I think it's loaded. And I think it's gonna be probably the best team at the end of the year.
And that's the thing is I have him at 5. So it sounds like I'm, totally dissecting his team right now and calling it bad because his offense is so good. So I have it at 5. I wonder, like, with the innings and with who's there, like, does he even get to above average pitch? Like, does he get 7 points in any pitching category?
Yeah. And the thing about, like, I shouldn't be so high because personally, I don't think that Trevor Bauer comes back. I don't think that he has a team to pitch for this year. I think that not only
he's taking on the contract, right?
Well, he's well, the problem is that he is under contract. So, like, first off, he has to get cleared by MLB, which I think they want to either suspend him or they're just going to keep pushing these dates back to whenever. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get a suspension or what he's going to get. But even though he got the case cleared, he still has to get cleared by the MLB. Then after that happens, the Dodgers come out on record, and we said this in the last podcast, that said, hey, we don't want him in the clubhouse. So he's under contract for a team that doesn't want him, which makes it really hard to figure out where he's going to pitch for, because he has to be traded. So then a team has to give up assets to trade for him. A team that can take on his salary and wants him in their clubhouse is another hurdle. So I can't guarantee that he's going to get innings this year, but if he does, then it could be trouble for us.
All right, Chris, where do you got him? I'm curious. Go ahead.
I got him 3. And
all right.
It's riding on that offense and saves. Saves is the one category out of his pitching that I see him being top 5 in. And I think you're right, Kyle. It was Kyle, you said Joe Barlow takes over the I think that's going to be his way. And Kyle, what you said about Trevor Bauer, I know Eric, you had chimed in about the previous owner of Trevor Bauer. That was what you just said about what the Dodgers are facing is the exact reason I was trying to get rid of him too. It's like, he's under contract with me and I'm trying to get as much or any type of asset as I can because I don't want to make that decision when it comes to keepers.
Right.
And it was a bidding war at that aspect. Like, who would actually like give me something for him? And I had to sweeten the deal for it. And I just needed to get Bauer off my team because I knew I wasn't going to keep him at 40. I was thinking of going after him too. And we'll get to that when we get to my team, but like, get him off my team and recuperate whatever asset I can. And that should be what the Dodgers are thinking of doing too.
All right. We actually disagree on pretty much everyone at the top, which brings us to our third ranked player, which is going to be you, Eric. You come up at number 3 in the power rankings. Eric, you had yourself at number 4 in your own power rankings, which means I had you at number 1 in the power rank. I had you as my number 1 team. I know you're going to love to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you take us through? I know you kind of started with, with your draft strategy and how things panned out, but what do you think your strengths, weaknesses, and what you got going on here?
I think, like I said, I'm pretty well rounded offensively. I got guys that score runs. I think I got some home runs. I do have a few guys in there that are probably projected for under 20, but I feel like I got a few big boomers in there that'll kind of even that out. I have quite a handful of guys that are projected to steal 10 plus bases. So again, I think I figured that portion out, and I went in with the idea of depth in the rotation. I mean, like I said, I went in with 5 starters already: Woodruff, Stroman, Severino, Ray, and Barrios. I was able to get Kluber in the reserve draft, who I think is going to be decent. Clevenger, again, for $10. I know he didn't pitch last year. He got hurt. But what pitcher hasn't? When you go back and look at his career, he has never, outside of his rookie year where he pitched 50 innings, he has never pitched bad. Mike Clevenger has never pitched bad baseball.
I agree.
So I like where I left off there. I kind of wish I would have drafted Kyle Wright and picked up Brady Singer, because Kyle Wright, again, early sample size, is off to a fantastic start to this point in the year through a couple starts. But I like what I did. I think, again, I evened it out. I don't think I'm really struggling anywhere. Stroman's not a big strikeout guy, but I got 3 guys that are. So overall, balance in the lineup, balance in the rotation. And I think Chris Bryant, I know there's a lot of Rocky hype going on right now, but in that outfield with his running ability, he might get MVP votes this year. That's one of my hot takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pitching staff is top notch. I mean, it might be 1A, 1C between kind of the 3 of us that are in this podcast right now in regards to our pitching. We kind of all have the different aspects of what we like about our pitching staffs. I mean, this has kind of some top strikeout guys, some top arms. Robbie Ray continues to do what he did last year. You partner that with Brandon Woodruff, Jose Barrios. If you get peak performances out of those guys, it's going to be tough for anyone to kind of measure up to what you can bring for a pitching staff. And what we've seen early from Severino, Stroman, you're not going to get the strikeouts, but you might not need them if you get what you need from everybody else. You got a top closer in Diaz. If you can keep the job, you worry about the ERA and WHIP with Diaz and with him keeping the job, especially if the Mets aren't as good as we kind of think they're going to be this year. Could be a problem. But and Clevenger, I mean, you definitely have some good solid pitching depth here, and then the offense, not really any holes, kind of from top to bottom. You got your soft spot in Juan Segura there. DJ LeMahieu is good value. I don't really see any holes to anything you have here. I think power might be a concern, but I mean, you also have plenty of boppers here. Simeon, Chris Bryant, Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, obviously Jorge Soler. I think that's why it was important for you to pick up a guy like Soler. If you're going to have guys like Baду and Verdugo and Segura and LeMahieu might not hit 20 home runs, but you kind of got enough 40 home run guys to kind of balance it all out. So I just think that when it comes to the balance of a roster, that's why I had you number 1 in my power rankings. I just think that there's not really any holes here. You add Conforto to the list. If he signs somewhere in a few weeks, then it could be something.
Hey, I'll take it. Show me where I'm wrong, Chris. Don't give me some bad ranking now. Come on now.
I have you number 1 as well.
Oh, all right. Hey,
it's always going to be number 1 in the power.
I shouldn't have rated myself so damn low.
Yep. I have you number 1.
It worked out for Jay last year. We had him pretty much number 1 all year, and he didn't take home a single dollar. So it's always a good omen to be number 1 in the power rankings.
And the ironic thing about that is, again, such early season sample sizes, but we talk pre-show. Why don't you take a look and show where I'm at in the Roto rankings 10 games in? And that's what's funny about it, is because none of my pitchers were raving about the rotation. My pitching staff got off to such an awful start. I've been going through all the other matchups this week to kind of see what other people have been doing. And I got off to like such a disastrous start where, if you look at Roto, which I hadn't looked at until Kyle showed me earlier, I'm freaking awful right now. But again, it just goes to show we're 10 games in, so we'll see. Oh wow, that's
Oh
that's
wait,
last year. You scared me there, Kyle. That
Yeah,
was
that's
last
oh,
year.
all right, I gotta get to this year's.
But I mean, it go, and that's why I said it before, but I did all these rankings right after the draft because these 10 game sample
Yeah.
sizes are tough. Yeah, and look at me way down there, #1 team. How about
Yeah.
it?
Hey, Eric, I started out there last year too. I was down in the dumps, and you just wait. You wait for your guys to even out, and you wait for you guys to get hot.
100%. Yep, and that's why I got a little baseball because it all evens out at the end.
All right, so we're gonna go to our #2 team, which is yours truly. I haven't really I haven't really talked. I've saved you guys the headache of having to listen to me talk about my own team. So I've kind of saved it. Why don't you tell me what you think, Eric, and then I'll kind of explain some of my draft strategy and stuff.
Obviously the Tatis thing puts you out early in the draft. I mean, it kind of made you have to sit and wait for a while, which I think you knew that going in because it seemed like that was a strategy you were fine with, but that puts you out. Adames at 15 is interesting. I know you're high on him. We'll see. Justin Turner at 12, I think is a pretty good value. Knable at 15. Again, we hope he can stay the save guy there, but he never really has been a closer much in his career outside of 1 year. I wasn't thrilled with the draft, but at the same time, I don't think there was a whole lot you needed to do. And again, that's a little ironic saying I think you should have went after Tatis because I do, and I think you needed to do that. But you were also one of those teams that could afford to do that. So I think that's really, really huge that you were able to get him back and make sure that trade is worth something. I think your offense is loaded. I'm a big fan of Sanchez in Miami as well. I think that was a really nice move there. Offense is going to hit. Devers is going to hit. Marte is going to hit. Soto is going to hit. Turner's going to hit. The pitching, as we've talked about before, is there. Morton, Gosman, Alcantara, Wheeler. It is stacked. And obviously, you went the depth route there with so many of your bench guys. Soroka, your Queedy being there as well. I think your team is stacked. I think it's really, really solid all the way around. I actually did have you dropping one spot though from pre-draft to post-draft. I had you #2 pre-draft, and I dropped you to #3 post-draft. Again, it's not necessarily that I hated anything you did, but you did have to gut a lot of your salary on missing half of that guy this year. And I think that's something that you could afford, but I don't necessarily mean that makes it where you had a great draft. But I think again, you could afford to do that because your team is stacked, and that's why I have you #3 on mine.
Yeah, I kind of looking at my team on paper right now. It's hard to really love it. I got right now my starting first baseman is Seth Beer, and I got Steven Kwan in my outfield and Justin Turner at utility. Not guys that you not name brand names, not guys you really expect to kind of be with me. If I have a top team, you don't really want those kind of guys in your lineup. You just kind of hope that they're more like stopgap players. But yeah, hopefully once I get Tatis and Teoscar Hernandez and Laureano back from their respective suspensions and injuries, things kind of start to look a little bit different. The offense kind of starts to shape together, and hopefully I can turn the corner. If I can just kind of hover around, maybe like the 4 or 5 range in Roto, and then just make a second half push, that'd kind of be the dream of where I'm at right now. I want to go after Tatis just because I know he's always going to retain that trade value. I mean, it doesn't matter kind of when I trade him, how long I wait. You just know he's kind of always going to be there. People are always going to kind of be clamoring for him. You could always turn him into assets one way or another. The pitching staff, I guess you can call Zach Wheeler like the ace, but I don't think he's probably near the 5 to 10 range, maybe top 5, depending on who you ask. But I don't think that a single team in the league has about 4 top 15, top 20 pitchers like I do, between Alcantara, Gausman, Morton, and Wheeler. Then Valdez kind of nipping at the heels there. But I just think that having those kind of 4 horses puts me in a good position for success. Strikeout numbers should be decent, but probably not the top. ERA whip should be decent, probably not the top. But I just kind of like the kind of floor I have with the pitching staff. With the closers that I have, I like kind of the pitching staff that I have here. Guys that I can trade, closers that I can trade. Offense we'll see. We'll see kind of where the offense shakes out. I don't really have the stolen bases that I probably need, but I actually think that one of my bold takes that Jorge Mateo is going to be top 5 in the league in steals. I think this guy's got a ton of speed. If he can stay in the lineup for Baltimore, I think that he's going to be a really good speed guy. I don't typically love speed specialists, but it just might be what my roster needs right now while I wait the storm of waiting for Laureano, Teoscar Hernandez, and Tatis.
Let's hear it, Chris. Dig them.
I actually have them 2.
Oh, number 1 and number 2.
How about it?
Dose right behind you, Eric. And you've got some offense, you've got the pitching. And I think what your strategy is going to be is you're going to wait for one of those relief pitchers to just take over the closer spot and then get rid of whoever else you got and then start.
I actually think that Rainey has it, and I think that Bard does too. Bard gave up a run the other day, but he's already got 2-3 saves. So he's got 4 saves already. No, that's projections, what I'm looking at.
Even too, if you want to look at those projections, I mean, you got how many players you've got? Yeah, so Bard and Rainey are closers, and then you have Bender, and Neville's going to be a closer. So you can take that and swap it for something. Whoever needs a closer right now, whoever's losing in saves, swap one of those guys and get whatever you need in the stat category for that prospect or player.
That's the goal. I need an outfielder or first baseman right now because I don't love the way
even
I'm right there.
Even at catcher too, I like Kirk, but they also have a really top prospect coming up in Moreno, and they also have Danny Jensen there. I mean, you're talking of absolute log jam in Toronto. I wonder, you're always about getting as many at bats as you can out of your catcher. I wonder long term if Kirk and Jansen are almost a complete platoon job there.
Kirk is a good enough. The reason why I'm actually so high on him and why it's like that's the pick that I was sweating in the draft was the Kirk pick because I thought Krim would take him. He's actually playing DH a lot. He's got 23 at bats already through like the first 7 games.
Now here's the thing with DH though, and that's where a lot of teams aren't thinking of. If you DH your catcher and you only have 2 catchers on your roster, teams are gonna have to be real careful about that because if there's an injury, that's trouble because you can't swap out a DH somewhere else.
No, because you can still swap out.
I don't think you can go from DH to on the field. I don't think you've ever been able to, have you?
Maybe not.
I thought when you subbed out your DH, it automatically became a pitcher spot.
Which I think they would just do. I think that'd be fine if they had to.
Yeah, they could. Yeah.
All right. So that leaves one team left.
The other guy.
Our preseason number 1 retained his spot. And that is going to be Mr. Sliding into the M's, Mr. Christopher Zajac. Number 1, for the record, I do not have him number 1 in my power rankings. I have him down at 4. So there was really like a big discrepancy of what we kind of think about all these teams and kind of how they leveled out. And we had to go by the averages of each. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how it all pans out. But yeah, I actually have Chris number 4. You have him number 1, which kind of brings him up. So tell me what you love about Chris's team, Eric.
I mean, do you have right now like a better 1-2 than Vlad and Bo? Come on. I mean, Vlad and Bo are they're just crazy good. And there's no reason right now that they're not going to be worth their price next year. And that's kind of crazy to think going into year 3 on that. Again, I like Rendon. Springer's going to kill it. I think Andrew Vaughn at $8 is a great price considering he was 14 last year. JD Martinez at $18 is an absolute steal. I know, and the fact that he's still listed as an outfielder is awesome, that you don't have to pigeonhole him into the utility spot. Again, absolute steal. And let's talk about the rotation. Ian Anderson, Walker Buehler, huge fan of Logan Gilbert. Freddie Peralta is one of the best values in the league at $2. So, and then you throw in Liam Hendricks, who got off to a little bit of a shaky start, but he's getting it going now. Kitteridge in the saves, top rotation, pretty inexpensive rotation. And then you have a lineup that is just going to absolutely produce. Now, the only thing that worries me is if one of those big guys goes down, if a Martinez, if a Bo, if a Vlad goes down, they are producing so much that if one of them goes down, then all of a sudden, I don't want to say you'd be in trouble, but man, injuries would be, I guess you could say this for anyone, but injuries to one of your star players would, I think, be one of your worst nightmares. But I guess, again, you could say that for anybody, but really for your team, you cannot have Vlad or Bo tearing Achilles. You just can't. I mean, they are just so crucial.
Yeah, for me, it's just like, it's because, and even you admitted this, Chris, is like the lack of reserve draft production that you got. I look at some of the guys that are currently in your lineup, like Josh Harrison and Bobby Dalbec and Tony Kemp. And I'm like, what is Tony Kemp bringing to a fantasy team? I don't really know. Josh Harrison, what is he really bringing to a fantasy team? I don't know. Even maybe you like their fielding. Maybe that's why you think that maybe we're getting points for fielding and playing time. I'm not really sure. But and even Andrew Vaughn, I mean, he's good. He's a good hitter, but I don't know if he's going to play every day now that some of the guys are hurt. But once what's his name comes back from injury, it was
Pollock.
yeah, but once Pollock comes back from injury, Gavin Sheets is kind of taking some playing time away from Vaughn still. Like, I don't know if he's a full-time player. So, yeah, I mean, the offense is good enough to kind of withstand some not so good players. But I mean, I feel like if you could get some guys into some more productive guys into those spots, you'd be a lot better off. And that would kind of be the last infinity stone. Is that how it works? And yeah, I mean, the pitching is tough to argue that this isn't, if not the best, one of the best. Like I said, it's top 3 stats in the league. I mean, Walker Buehler, probably top 3 pitcher in the league, especially with DeGrom missing time. Logan Gilbert, I'm really high on. I think he's going to be really good this year. He's already got 10 innings, 11 strikeouts, a sub-1 ERA, a sub-1 WHIP.
Gilbert and Peralta for $4 combined is
Peralta
just
is your 2,
oh.
and Liam Hendricks, as I said, when you have the number 1 closer in the league, it just brings everything else, up to a higher level. So. Ian Anderson, I don't know what we're going to get out of Ian Anderson this year. Obviously, a shaky first start. Some people aren't high on him.
2 shaky first starts.
Ooh, wait, he's only 4.2 innings and 2 starts. Ooh.
Alert.
Yeah, Achilles heel. And Tarek Skubal, I mean, I had him last year. He's going to be decent. I mean, he's got some good prospect pedigree. He could be good, but I'm not really sure. I don't really love any of these bench pitchers. So the way you kind of rounded out the rotation, I don't love. I mean, your top 3 will carry you so far. I mean, I think your top 3 are unmatched. I like that I have 4, but I mean, between Peralta, Buehler, and then pick one of Anderson, Gilbert. I think those guys are just pretty studly. I don't think there's a better 1-2 punch than Peralta and Buehler in the league. In regards to kind of starting pitching. So I mean, it's a solid team, but I just think that there's some holes there. I think that the back end of your rotation is lacking. You don't have a second closer. Kittredge, I mean, he's a Rays pitcher, so yeah, you might get a few saves, but he's not going to be a full-time closer. The Rays will never have a full-time closer. And just like the 3 spots in lineup, Dahlbeck, Kemp, and Harrison. I don't think any of those guys are full-time players. Even if they were full-time players, they still wouldn't be fantasy assets. So I just think that there's some holes here, and that you're going to need to fill throughout the year.
I agree with everything that you said, both of you. I am going to kick myself, and I already did in my power rankings. I have me ranked 11th.
Ooh,
wow!
Because of, and I'm hoping that, knock on wood, that's a reflection of just like last year, how I started out horrible, and then I just keep building and building and building and building, and I win Roto again somehow. But yeah, I mean, Eric talked about it right away. If one of my all-stars goes down, I'm screwed. And I mean, look at right now. I was having big expectations for Kirilloff, and he's already got his wrist injury again from last year. So
never a good sign. Never a reoccurring injury.
And you can say all that about X-rays and whatnot, and they coming back negative, and they're giving him already cortisone shots. So it's like, great. I just kept a rookie who I thought was going to be good, and now he's already on the IL. Same thing you look at. I brought up Ian Anderson already has 2 starts. Freddie Peralta already has 2 starts, and he's only pitched 7 innings and has an 11 ERA and a 2.2 WHIP. So like, not a hot start by any means, but I'm hoping that these guys catch fire a little bit later on once it starts warming up a little bit. And I'll even say too, like, my draft strategy, I don't know if you caught up on it. You finally did.
You waited.
Oh, I waited. Because I only had, I had 12 keepers. I had, I think, $200 in salary already. Mm-hmm. So I only had, by my calculations, I could have only bid $7 on average. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at, I knew I was going to take a $1 catcher, the Kyle special $1 catcher. And I wanted to get one of the $1 closers that could potentially be there to help me get my dollar amount per player that I could spend up to like the $12, $13 range. And then I still left $16 on the table. So like, not the best draft strategy on my part. But
I also about leaving money on the table. And that's kind of the Bryce thing. It's like, I don't fault Bryce for spending 37 on Cabrine Hayes, because it's better than leaving that money on the table.
See, I don't know. I disagree with that. I disagree with
if you're trying to compete this year, don't leave money on the table.
Well, right. But does that mean you spend 40 on a guy I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
And that's like looking at some of the players that I got, like Bobby Dahlbeck for $4. I could have spent another $16 on one of the $20 players that went. So name one of the $20 players that could have been
Even a Soler or a Renfro or
a benefit to my team to kind of recuperate some of those stats if one of my all-stars goes down, if a Vladdy, God forbid, goes down with an injury or a Bo Bichette. Like that's the one thing that I was kind of hesitant about. I wanted to throw out. I told Eric this. I think I told Kyle this, and I think I might have told a couple other people. Like I was going to throw out Fernando Tatis if he got down to my first bid. I was going to throw him out there, and I was going to like put the starting one at like $20 and just say like that's the start. I want you guys to spend your money so that I could get those big name players down to like that $12 average, that $13 average.
Yeah.
I didn't win anyone until what, 40th?
Yeah, at least.
And that was Andrew Vaughn.
Let's see here. 42nd.
42nd, and that was Bobby Dahlbeck, and I went Andrew Vaughn right after that.
Yeah.
So like I wanted all you guys to spend all your money on the players on the big name players so that I could get some of those $20 players maybe. And then it actually backfired for me where I only spent, $9 on Vaughn, $4 on Dahlbeck, and even to like I targeted some players that I thought would be in like that $7 range that I thought were going to be good bets, like Tariq Skubal and that. So
yeah, to me, it's just like you paid $4 for Dahlbeck when you could have had any of these guys at the end for even cheaper that were just scooped up later. Just spent money early on, and then at the end you got Grichuk and Aguilar in the reserve draft and Connor Joe and Blackman and all those kind of guys.
And like some of the guys that helped me last year, Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, like I had those guys in my queue and I literally was falling asleep waiting, and that's how the Brandon Crawford thing happened. I didn't know it was my turn to bid anyone, and then it went to the next person in my queue, and it was like, oh, Brandon Crawford, someone else threw him in there, and then you realized that it was me that was bidding on. I'm like, oh my god, wait a second, and then I didn't even realize I already had my three fielder positions already taken, and that's when Krim chimed up, and I was like, oh crap, I actually did mess up because I literally was falling asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up our power rankings. Before we go, Tyler, are you there? We had some discrepancies on your rankings. How'd you feel about how you did? Can't tell. Oh, there he is.
I missed all of that, so I don't know.
That's okay. I had you what? I had you 6th. Eric has you 11th. What do you think about that?
That's fine.
And
get slapped later in the year when I'm fucking top 3.
There we go. Where'd you have him, Chris? I forget. Chris had Tyler 10th. All right.
I got a lot of young players.
Yeah, you do.
All right. So before
we may not pan out.
Before we wrap things up, there's a few more bold takes we want to get on the record. Anything that we missed so far. We have several that we said. I said Byron Buxton, top 10 fantasy hitter if he gets 120 games played. I said, let's see here, Willie Adames over Wander Franco. I said Jordan Romano, lead the league in saves and blown saves. Freddie Freeman, under 30 home runs. Jorge Mateo, top 5 in steals. Frank Schwindel will not be the Cubs' first baseman in September. Julio Rodriguez over Bellinger. Under 15 home runs for Adley Rutschman. Gore will have Mackenzie Gore over a 4.5 ERA. Trevor McGill will outperform Mackenzie Gore, and Krim will not have a single pitcher throw 180 innings. There's two more that I want to add. The two that I want to add are first, Miami, the Marlins will have 4 pitchers inside the top 40. Who those pitchers are, I don't know. Could be certainly Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, Luzardo, maybe Eliezer Hernandez, or maybe Trevor Rogers. But more than likely Trevor Rogers, because I think my next bold prediction, Trevor Rogers will be the best pitcher that was drafted in the auction this year. I don't have a lot of confidence in that. I'm just pretty high on Trevor Rogers.
All right.
Any bold takes you didn't get to, Eric?
Not really. I kind of sprinkled them in throughout. I don't have as many as you. We definitely added some interesting ones throughout the show though. But yeah, I'm excited to see how it all pans out.
You have one Dodgers one you haven't said yet.
Oh, Julio Urias will be the best pitcher on the Dodgers. That's kind of my bold prediction. There's a lot of pitchers on the Dodgers, so that could go very wrong. Kershaw still nasty. Bueller obviously nasty, but I'm a big fan of Urias, and he's still young. Like it feels like he's been taking forever to come up. The dude's still incredibly young, so I think he's really good.
He got off to a rocky start, so we'll have to turn things around pretty quickly.
Yeah.
All right. Any last words, gentlemen, before we wrap up this 6-hour long podcast?
Yeah. No, man, I think it was a fun one. I'm excited to get going. We'll start having the shorter ones as we do the monthly kind of updates. But no, it's fun. I'm excited to get going and see how it all works. And next year, I know I keep thinking about this, but every year the layers of the league keep changing because next year we're literally going to have A, B, and C contract players, with those C contract players being really good players. I mean, we're going to be talking about guys that get thrown back in after year 3. So it's almost like as the league goes on, you're actually seeing more and more layers of strategy unfolding as it progresses, which is cool to see.
Certainly.
If you want to start talking about next year, I'm curious to see what stolen bases are like next year with the bags getting bigger. I am curious to see if you see like some of the players right now that only get like 5 stolen bases, do they become more valuable next year when they can potentially steal 15 bags?
Probably more or less it's less the distance thing, but more of it's easier to evade a tag, right?
Yep. And look at some players that have speed but have like horrible stolen base stats, but they get caught 15, 20 times. What if those 15 or 20 become an extra 10 stolen bases?
Certainly.
And you look at the differentials between what the maximum stolen base was in our league last year versus the minimum and the average. Like that could be a make or break category for Roto next year.
Definitely.
Certainly. All right. I think that just about wraps things up for Eric, Chris, Tyler, and myself. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you made it all the way through, but I doubt it. And we'll see you guys soon, maybe in a week.
Go White Sox.
Yeah.